Hey everyone, welcome to that Paranormal channel. How's your day going? I've been looking forward to this, just sitting down with you and sharing paranormal experiences from all over. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in their stories, and please keep them coming. They're the best gifts you could give this channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest videos. I honestly love this job. Now, turn on a small nightlight, pull the blanket up around you, and dive into today's paranormal experiences. So, let me start by saying this up front. I'm not someone who goes looking for ghosts. I'm pretty skeptical about anything afterlife or supernatural. I like explanations I can touch and measure. But then there's this story. I still don't know exactly what happened. There was no clear sighting, no booming voice from the sky, just an experience that left a crack in my certainty. This was a little over 20 years ago. It started with a fire. My wife at the time, her name was Hannah, and I lived on the third floor of this old apartment building. We were young, broke, and just figuring life out with one toddler and another baby on the way. One night, the apartment below us caught fire. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. The fire didn't reach our place structurally, but the smoke did. Thick, black, oily smoke. It crawled into everything: clothes, books, furniture. The apartment reeked. It was basically unlivable. The complex felt bad about it and worked with us. They let us move into an upgraded unit for the same rent. Honestly, at the time, it felt like a lucky break. The new place was a 2-story unit. First floor was the living room and kitchen. Second floor had the bedrooms. The stairs went up along a wall that our bedroom shared, so at night, you could hear every creak and footstep in the stairwell. It felt kind of cozy, actually, like the house itself was breathing around us. For about a week, it was fine. Stressful because, moving plus pregnancy plus toddler, but normal. Then one morning, Hannah came to me looking shaken. Not just had a weird dream shaken, more like I just saw a car accident shaken. She said, "I had this dream last night and I can't stop thinking about it." In her dream, she said she woke up in our bed, in that exact apartment. Same dim light from the window, same cheap blinds, same shadows on the wall. It didn't feel like a dream to her. It felt like she had just woken up for real. At the foot of the bed, she saw 3 people standing there. Not glowing, not monstrous, just people. Watching her. Studying her. She couldn't move or speak, but she could see them clearly. Then she heard something on the stairs. She described it as heavy, like something big was coming up the steps. Not a person. The sound had weight to it. She said it reminded her of an excited dog, those quick, eager steps, but it sounded bigger. And it was making these strange, happy, almost playful noises. Not quite a growl, not quite a bark. Behind the bedroom door, she could hear this thing getting closer with each step. And the 3 people at the foot of the bed started getting excited. Their breathing changed. Their shoulders tightened. It was like they were waiting for it, like they'd been anticipating this thing finally reaching the room. Just as Hannah felt that it was about to burst through the doorway and into our bedroom, she woke up. Heart pounding, drenched in sweat. Now, here's an important thing to know about her. She's a very devout Christian. The kind who believes that a moral, faithful person shouldn't fear the devil. The devil should be the one trembling. She's not dramatic. She doesn't share every anxious thought. So for her to sit there and admit, "I'm scared, this dream rattled me," was a big deal. Honestly, it was a little humiliating for her to even say it out loud. I did what I could. Listened, held her, told her it was just a dream. I figured it would fade in a couple of days, the way most dreams do. It didn't. About a week later, she came to me again. She looked worse, tired, wired, like she'd been holding her breath for days. She said, "I feel something in here with me, all the time." Not like a normal, "this place feels a little creepy" kind of vibe. She described it as an intense presence, like someone standing just over her shoulder, watching her. She said it was strongest when she was alone in the apartment, and especially near the stairs and our bedroom. And the really disturbing part? She said it felt like it was getting stronger every day. She told me straight up, "I don't know how long I can handle this." Now, moving again at that point was not realistic. New lease, new baby coming, money tight. Explaining to the landlord that we wanted to transfer apartments, again, because the place felt haunted, didn't feel like a winning strategy. But I took her seriously. Not because I suddenly believed in ghosts, but because I believed in her. She was clearly not making this up for attention. I'm skeptical, but I didn't grow up in a skeptical house. My mom is very open to spiritual and supernatural things. She'd told me a few stories over the years, experiences she couldn't explain, things that scared her. So I asked Hannah, "Do you want me to talk to my mom? See if she has any ideas?" Hannah does not like asking my mom for help. Let's just say their personalities didn't blend well. The fact that she immediately said, "Yes, please," told me just how shaken she really was. I called my mom and told her everything. The fire, the move, the dream, the feeling in the apartment. She listened quietly the whole time, which was rare for her. Usually she'd jump in with questions halfway through. When I finished, she paused and said, "Do you remember that thing that used to hang over our hallway when you were a kid? That round piece with the design on it?" I did. Growing up, we moved a lot, but that thing followed us from house to house. It was always hanging somewhere high, above a staircase or near a ceiling. It was about the size of a large dinner plate, woven out of thin, dark reeds. In the center, the strands formed this almost geometric wolf shape. As a kid, I thought it looked cool and kind of mysterious. I never really asked what it was. She said, "That's not just decoration. That was given to me." She went on to tell me something I'd never heard before. Around the time I was born, she said she'd gone through what she called a very bad spiritual situation. That's all she called it. No details. And that was unsettling because she'd shared other weird stories pretty openly, but not this one. Anyway, she said she ended up talking to a Native American medicine man someone had connected her with. He listened to what she was going through, made this talisman, and told her, "Hang it at the highest point in your home." She did. According to her, whatever had been tormenting her stopped. Just stopped. The feeling lifted. Life settled down. And the talisman had hung in our house ever since. She said, "I'm going to send it to you. Put it in the highest place in your apartment." The next day, a package showed up. Inside was that woven circle from my childhood. Seeing it again actually made me feel weirdly emotional, kind of like bumping into an old friend who knows things you don't. Our highest point in the apartment was above the stairwell, near the ceiling that overlooked both floors. So that's where we hung it. It looked almost too small for the big white wall, but it was there, watching over the stairs. Hannah stood under it, just looking up at it for a minute. Later that evening, I asked her, "How do you feel?" She took this deep breath and said, "Better, a lot better." Like something loosened its grip. For a while, things were normal again. The talisman just became part of the background, like a weird family heirloom that happened to live with us now. Several months later, I got a job offer in another state. It was a good opportunity, so we decided to move. We slowly packed up the apartment, boxes everywhere, kids' toys in random bags, that phase where everything looks worse before it looks better. On our last day there, we were down to the final odds and ends. Cleaning supplies, lamps, the stuff you always underestimate. We'd packed the car pretty tightly. Hannah buckled both kids, our toddler and our now newborn, into their car seats. They both fell asleep on the drive over, so she stayed in the car with them while I went in to finish up. The talisman was still hanging above the stairs. I remember standing at the bottom of the steps and thinking, if I don't take that down now, I'm going to forget it. And honestly, while I had taken Hannah's fear seriously, I still wasn't convinced the talisman was anything more than a powerful placebo. So I went upstairs, carefully took it down, carried it out to the car, and set it gently on the floor behind the driver's seat. Then I went back inside to grab another armful of stuff. As soon as I stepped into the apartment, something felt off. The air felt thicker. The silence sounded different, if that makes sense. Like the whole place was holding its breath. I brushed it off, told myself I was just tired, stressed, overthinking things. I grabbed a box, took it to the car, and came back in. The second time in, the feeling intensified. I felt like I'd walked into a room where someone had just been screaming and then abruptly stopped when I opened the door. No sound, just this leftover vibration of anger. I could feel my heart rate climbing, and I hadn't even done anything yet. By the third trip, it was bad. I walked in, and every hair on my arms and neck stood up. It felt like the walls were leaning in. The best way I can describe it is this. It felt like something in that apartment was aware of me, and furious. Not just irritated, not just, I don't like you. It felt like seething rage focused right between my shoulder blades. And it didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt like something that had been there quietly in the background, numbed or muffled, was now fully awake again. And it knew I'd taken away whatever had been keeping it in check. I remember thinking, very clearly, oh, it wasn't gone. It was sleeping. I was supposed to mop the kitchen floor, vacuum one more time, just basic move-out cleaning. I tried to push through the fear. I told myself I was being ridiculous. But my body was not buying that logic. My stomach knotted up. My hands were shaking a little. I felt genuinely nauseous, standing there with a vacuum in my hand. At some point, I just hit a wall internally. I set the vacuum down, left the mop and cleaning supplies in the corner of the kitchen, and walked out. On my way past the leasing office, I dropped our keys into the after-hours drop box. I didn't look back at the building. I remember thinking, they can keep the mop. I got in the car, trying to act normal. Hannah looked at me and said, "You okay?" I just said, "Yeah, we're done. Let's go." We drove away, talisman in the car, kids sleeping in the back, and that was it. We never set foot in that apartment again. To this day, I don't have a clean explanation. I can line things up and say, maybe it was stress, maybe it was suggestion, maybe Hannah's fear rubbed off on me. Maybe growing up with that talisman made my brain connect dots that weren't really there. And for a skeptic, I'll admit, that's a hard feeling to shake. So, let me take you back a bit. This happened, a little over 10 years ago now? And even today, my dad and I still bring it up like it was last week. We're from England, right? And that year we'd gone on holiday to the States. We flew into Los Angeles, stayed with some family friends just outside the city to save money, and one evening we all decided, let's drive down to this pier and boardwalk area by the ocean. You know the kind of place. Fairy lights strung overhead, street musicians, loads of little shops and restaurants, the whole thing buzzing. There were about 7 of us in total. Me, my dad, my mom, my little brother Jame, and our family friends. By the time we got there, it was properly dark. The air was still warm, there was music drifting in from somewhere, and the smell of food everywhere. We eventually found this busy restaurant, some kind of grill place, and joined the line outside to wait for a table. So my dad, Mark, is standing in front of me, holding Jame on his hip. Jame was maybe 3 at the time, half asleep, clinging to him. I'm just behind them, kind of zoning out, people watching. And then, this guy appears. Now, I say appears, but I did see him walking toward us in my peripheral vision. He was wearing this faded red t-shirt with a little logo on the chest, dark cargo shorts, and battered trainers. He had a bit of a belly, looked like he might be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Skin tone kind of brown, maybe Latino, maybe native, hard to tell in that lighting. He was carrying a big shopping bag in one hand and a smaller paper bag in the other. Totally ordinary guy, right? Except his eyes. At first I didn't clock it because you don't expect it. But when he got close and lifted his head properly, I could see them. They were completely black. I mean, no whites at all. Just two solid, jet black orbs. Like someone had drawn them on with ink. Like holes. And the second I registered that, something in me just switched on. I can't really explain this part logically. On paper, he did not look threatening. He's got shopping bags, he's alone, he's not shouting or anything. But my body reacted before my brain did. My whole nervous system just went, danger. Hard up, muscles tight, that buzzing feeling in your chest when you know something's not right. I remember thinking, I'm going to have to step in. I might actually have to fight this guy. Which is ridiculous because, again, he wasn't doing anything yet. But then I glanced at my dad, and I could see he felt it too. Now, my dad and I both trained martial arts for years, and there's this very particular way someone shifts their stance when they're ready for trouble, even if they're trying to be casual. He did that. Weight slightly adjusted, shoulders loose but prepared, eyes tracking every little movement. He still had Jame in his arms, but it was like his whole body was quietly saying, if something happens, I'm ready. The man with the black eyes walks right up to my dad. He doesn't look at anyone else. Doesn't even glance my way at first. He stops just inside that bubble of personal space where someone's now close enough to grab you if they want to. Then he says, in this weirdly calm voice, what do you think is the difference between a man and a human being? Now, this is the part that's hard to explain without sounding completely mad. I remember the rhythm of his voice, the way his mouth moved. I remember my dad answering slowly, struggling to find words, asking him what he meant. I remember the pauses, the feeling that it was a very strange, intense conversation. But the actual content? Gone. Completely blank. It's like he put up some kind of mental curtain and I was stuck on the outside of it. What makes it even stranger is that, apparently, no one else saw him. We were near the back of the line, but not far away from the others, maybe 3-4 meters max. There were people walking past us constantly, waiters weaving through, families queuing. You'd think someone would have turned their head and gone, who's that bloke with the weird eyes talking to them? But they didn't. Afterwards, when we sat down and I brought it up, my mom was like, what man? Our friends were the same. They remembered us stepping out of the line a little, maybe, but no one recalled seeing him at all. While we were talking to him, it felt like time changed. That's the best way I can put it. Not in a dramatic sci-fi way with everything freezing, but more like the whole world went a bit syrupy, slower, muted. The sound of the crowd seemed to pull back, like we were under a dome. I remember being hyper-aware of tiny details, the way the fairy lights flickered, the feeling of the wooden boards under my feet, the weight of the humid air. Like everything around us was on slow motion, but the conversation was happening in its own pocket. At one point, my dad said later, it felt like they were just standing there for ages. I remember these long pauses where my dad was trying to answer whatever the man was asking. Something about what we really are, and if we think we're only flesh, or something along those lines. But when I try to replay it, I just get that first question, and then static. Eventually, my dad told me his side of it. He said the guy kept circling around this idea that there's a difference between man in the everyday sense and human in some broader sense. Like there are things that look like us but aren't quite us, or that we ourselves are more than we understand. He mentioned things like altered genetics or beings that slip between what we'd call physical and something else. My dad was trying to follow, trying to answer honestly, but he said he was just as on edge as I was the whole time, ready to protect me and my brother if needed. And then there was this one moment that really stuck with him. Apparently, while the man was talking, my dad thought, if this goes sideways, I'll have to put Jame down and hit him first before he can hurt the kids. It wasn't a plan he said out loud, obviously. It was just a protective dad thought. Right after that, the man stopped mid-sentence, looked at my dad directly, and said, "I am not your enemy." Just like that. Very matter of fact. Not offended, almost reassuring. And then he turned his head to look straight at me. Now, from my point of view, all I saw were those black eyes. But Dad told me later that when the guy looked from him to me, he saw, this is going to sound wild, something like a vortex of light behind the man's eyes. Not a glow, not a reflection from the restaurant sign, but a sort of swirling tunnel, like he was looking through the man's face into something else. Dad swears he wasn't imagining it. He said it was there for a second or two, and then it was gone, and the guy's eyes just went back to being these empty black pools. And literally, as he stepped out of our little bubble, the world snapped back. The noise of the crowd rushed in again, clattering dishes, laughter, music. The hostess from the restaurant suddenly called our name, like it had been timed to the second. "Table for 7, she shouted, cheerful, totally unaware that my dad and I were standing there in that aftershock feeling of, what just happened? We went in, sat down, and the first thing my dad and I did, before we even looked at the menus, was stare at each other like, "Did you just?" And we both started talking at once. We compared notes right there at the table. The feeling of danger, the fight response, the time distortion, the way no one else saw him, the black eyes, the first question. Dad told me what he remembered of the conversation. I told him how I couldn't recall anything after that opening line. We both had that same strange sense that the man wasn't normal, whatever that means. And then life just went on. For years, I barely thought about it. Every so often, something would trigger the memory. A crowded street at night, someone asking a deep question out of nowhere, and it would all flood back. And I'd text my dad, or he'd bring it up over a beer, and we'd go, "Still can't explain it, can we?" We still can't. All I know is, that night, on a busy boardwalk in California, surrounded by hundreds of people, it felt like time bent, the world tuned out, and someone, or something, stepped in just long enough to ask us a question we still don't really know how to answer. What's the difference between a man and a human? Okay, so let me tell you something that still kind of freaks me out. In a good way. When I was a kid, I was about 11, so this was around 2010. I had this really strange dream. Not scary, just different. It felt weirdly familiar, like remembering a place you're sure you've never been to. In the dream, I'm just sitting on this old wooden bench in a park. Thing is, I never went to that park, not in real life. It's quiet, a little cloudy, and I'm just sitting there, doing nothing. Then this older man, maybe in his 70s, walks over. He's wearing this dark green suit that looks slightly old-fashioned, like something from an old photograph. He sits down right next to me, like he's done it 1,000 times. What really stuck with me was his throat. There was this thick, pale scar curving around his neck, like something tight had been around it for too long. Even in the dream, I remember thinking, that must have hurt. I don't remember every word of our conversation now, just flashes of it. I remember feeling completely calm with him, like I'd known him forever. We were talking about my mom, about school, normal little things. At one point, I remember asking him, "What happened to your neck?" And his face changed. He looked sad and tired, but also sort of proud. Near the end of the dream, he turned toward me, reached out, and took my hand in both of his. His hands were warm and a bit rough, like he'd done a lot of work in his life. And then he said to me, very clearly, "I'll always look after you, you and Lenny." And in that moment, when he touched my hand, I got chills all over my body. That's actually the part that still gets me, because that feeling was so intense it woke me up. And even now, telling you this, I can almost feel it again. The next morning, I wandered into the kitchen while my mom was emptying the dishwasher. I was still kind of shaken up, so I just started telling her about the dream, every detail I could remember. The bench, the suit, the scar, how he spoke to me. She turned to look at me, and I will never forget her face. She went completely pale, and she actually dropped a plate on the floor. It shattered, and she didn't even react to the noise at first. She just stared at me. She asked me to describe him again, slowly. So I did. The way he looked, the way he sat, the scar on his neck. And then I mentioned that he said he would always look after me and Lenny. My mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. She asked me, "He really said Lenny?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And that's when she told me that Lenny was her childhood nickname, a nickname that only her father used. Here's the thing, I never met her father. He died years before I was born. I'd seen maybe 1 or 2 photos of him in passing, but we never really talked about him much. I didn't even remember his name then, just that in the dream I somehow knew who he was. I told her about the scar and how I'd asked him what happened. In the dream, he'd told me he'd been tortured while he was in captivity, but he hadn't gone into all the details, just enough to make me feel the weight of it. My mom just broke down crying. Through the tears, she said, "He never told me that. Not like that." She explained that her father had been part of the Dutch resistance during World War II and that he'd been captured. He'd been held in a building near a square in Groningen, she named the place, like it was burned into her memory, and that he'd been interrogated by collaborators. After that, my mom started talking more about the sensitivity in our family. She says she sometimes feels negative energies in the house, and every now and then she burns incense or does little cleansing rituals. I used to roll my eyes at that stuff, honestly. But she told me her mother, my grandmother, was the same way. That she would sometimes talk to people in her sleep, or wake up and know things she shouldn't know. She told me that I might have the same thing. That if I wanted to talk to him again, I'd have to open up or reach out. I didn't really know what that meant, but as a kid I tried. For years I went to sleep hoping I'd see him again on that bench, hear him call my mom Lenny one more time. But he never came back, not in that way. I kind of filed it away as a weird, powerful childhood experience. One of those family stories that only gets told late at night when people are already emotional. I didn't fully believe it, but I didn't fully disbelieve it either. It just lived somewhere in the back of my mind. Then today happened. Today we had a funeral for my dad's uncle. It was held at this cemetery I'd never been to before. Actually, it was my first time at any graveyard in my entire life. I'm almost 25 now, and somehow I'd managed to avoid them until today. From the moment we walked in, I felt off. Not terrified, just really uncomfortable. Heavy, like the air was thicker somehow. I tried to brush it off as just nerves and sadness. After the service, when everyone was kind of standing around in that quiet, awkward way people do after funerals, I suddenly thought of my grandfather, my mom's dad, the man from my dream. I knew he was buried in the same cemetery, so I asked my parents if we could go find his grave. We walked around for a bit until my mom recognized his name on a stone. It was simple, not flashy or anything. Just his name, his dates, and a small symbol. I stood there, and for the first time in my life, I was physically in front of him. I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of awkwardly introduced myself, out loud. I said something like, "Hi, I'm your granddaughter. We, met once, in a dream." I felt ridiculous, but also strangely emotional. And then, as I'm standing there, this gust of wind blows through the trees. It's chilly, like you'd expect in a graveyard. But on my right shoulder, I suddenly feel warmth. Not just, "Oh, the sun came out," warmth. It felt like the weight and heat of a hand being gently placed there. Firm, comforting. Like someone standing slightly behind me saying, without words, "I'm here." I froze. My whole body lit up with goosebumps, but my shoulder felt safe. I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear some booming voice from the sky or whatever. It was just that touch, that impossible, gentle pressure that lasted a few seconds and then faded away. I stood there, staring at his name, and I just whispered, "Thank you." I didn't even fully know what I was thanking him for. Looking after my mom? Watching over me? Showing up once when I needed him? All of it, maybe. It's been about 6 hours since then, and I'm still sitting here with chills running up my arms every time I think about it. I've gone back and forth my whole life between believing and not believing in this kind of thing. But after today, I don't know. It's harder to just shrug it off as coincidence. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe it was grief, or suggestion, or the wind doing something weird at exactly the right moment. But maybe, just maybe, it really was an old man in a dark green suit, still keeping his promise to look after me and his little Lenny from wherever he is now. And honestly, I kind of hope it was. So, it's 7:54 in the morning right now, and I still haven't slept. I've just been lying here replaying everything that happened last night, and honestly, I'm still freaked out. Okay, let me back up a bit. There are 4 of us living in this apartment. Me, my older brother Marco, my younger brother Eli, and my little sister Lena. It's a cozy 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom place we moved into about 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it's home. We've never really had any serious issues in this building. No rats, no possums in the walls, nothing like that. The worst we've seen has been a couple of earthworms that snuck in when it was raining, and the occasional cockroach that we immediately declare war on. Past tenants apparently didn't have any rodent problems either. So, last night, well, technically this morning, it was around 12:10 a.m. or so. Things were pretty normal. I was in the shared bedroom with Lena, and Eli, who works this weird 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. remote shift with people in different time zones, had just finished work. He came into our room, dropped onto his mattress, and said something like, "Wow, it's already past midnight?" Lena heard that and was like, "Okay, we should really go to sleep now." I usually sleep when Lena does, habit from us getting ready for bed at the same time. But then I realized I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. So I told her, "I'll be right back, just gonna brush," and headed downstairs. And literally the moment I stepped off the last stair, I got this weird, heavy feeling, like the air had changed somehow. For context, this wasn't the first time I'd gone downstairs alone at night to brush my teeth. I do it all the time. And yeah, it's normal to feel a little creeped out when you're alone in the dark. I'm not new to that. But this was different. It wasn't just, "Oh, it's dark and spooky." It felt off. So the layout is kind of important here. When you come down the stairs, the bathroom is to the left. The kitchen is a bit farther down, on the right. And then there's this weird little empty room outside, like a storage room or something, that you can see through the kitchen window and through this tiny, high-up window in the bathroom. That little room has no light. At night, it's just pure black, like someone cut a square out of the world. Even in the daytime, it's a little unsettling, but at night, it's just pitch darkness. You feel like if you stare too long, something might look back. So I go to the kitchen sink to brush my teeth. Yeah, we do it there because the bathroom sink is tiny and the water pressure is pathetic. And while I'm brushing, I get that prickly feeling that something is watching me through the window over the sink. Again, not the first time I've had that feeling. I tell myself, "You're just paranoid, chill, and keep going." I finish up there and head to the bathroom because I really don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. needing to pee. And in the bathroom, it's calm, completely normal. That's actually what weirded me out. Usually, late at night, I get this creepy sense like something is hovering on the other side of that little upper window, just out of sight. But this time, nothing. It felt like daytime, calm, quiet, still. Like the calm before a storm. Anyway, I finish my whole routine. Face, skincare, bathroom, all that. And by the time I'm done, it's a little before 1 a.m. I turn off the kitchen light and start heading upstairs. Normally, I switch it off from the top before going into our room, but that night, I didn't. The switch is near the little foyer, not right by our bedroom door, and the idea of standing in the dark hallway, turning off the light, and walking blind to my room? Absolutely not. Our room light was already off because Lena was asleep, and I didn't want to wake her, so I just left the hallway light on. I go into the room, flop onto my bed, and scroll through TikTok like a responsible adult who definitely isn't ruining their sleep schedule. Eventually, my eyes start to feel heavy. I put my phone down, and I'm in that half-asleep, half-awake zone where your brain is still kind of listening. And then I hear it. This sharp little click. It sounded exactly like when someone tries to open a locked door and the lock just catches. My immediate thought was, okay, calm down. It's probably just my glasses shifting on my messy desk. They make a similar sound if they slide against something. So I force myself not to overthink it. And then, a few seconds later, something starts scratching at our bedroom door. At first, I freeze, completely. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. I try to be logical. Maybe it's a mouse. Maybe this is the one time a rat found its way in, and I'm just unlucky. It happens, right? But I know this building. We've never had rats. Ever. The scratching doesn't sound small. It's not a light little skitter at the bottom of the door. Whatever it is, it's moving around, like it's testing different spots. There's scratching around the doorknob, then in the middle of the door, then back toward the knob. I get up, because my brain is screaming at me, what if the door isn't locked? So I stumble over in the dark, my legs feeling like jelly, and reach for the knob. It's closed, locked, and I just stand there with my hand on the doorknob, listening. The scratching keeps going. It's not gentle. It's not an angry clawing either. It's insistent. Like something wants in but isn't in a rush. Almost like a dog pawing at a door. But here's the thing. We don't have a dog. Marco's girlfriend has a small dog, yeah, and sometimes she stays over with her and they sleep in his separate room. But before I went into my room, I only saw one pair of slippers outside Marco's door. Just his. No girlfriend, no dog. And even if the dog had been here, she's tiny, very clingy, and very vocal. She would have been whining or barking. Also, she definitely couldn't reach as high as the middle of our door, let alone around the knob. And then it gets worse. There's this thin strip of light at the bottom of our door because the hallway light is still on outside. I'm staring at it, trying to calm myself down, and suddenly that strip of light just disappears. Like something big is blocking it, standing directly in front of our door. It's like whatever is scratching is now also standing there, right on the other side. At this point, I am done. I'm not trying to be brave. I'm not trying to be the main character. I'm just a terrified person in pajamas who does not want to get dragged into some horror movie side plot. So I do the only thing that makes sense to me. I wake up Lena. I crawl over to her bed and start whispering urgently. "Lena, wake up. Wake up, please." My voice is shaking so badly that I wake Eli up too. They both sit up and listen, and I can tell immediately that they hear it because their faces change. It's not one of those moments where they're like, "It's just the pipes," or "You're imagining things." The scratching is loud. Wrong. It's circling the door like it owns the hallway. Then Eli decides he's going to be that guy, the horror movie character you scream at through the screen. He grabs his flashlight, stands up, and starts walking toward the door like he's about to negotiate with the unknown. I whisper, "What are you doing? Don't open it. Seriously, Eli, don't." I'm imagining the door flying open and something just rushing past him straight at us. He puts his hand on the knob. I'm standing there holding my breath, absolutely convinced this is the moment my life turns into one of those based on a true story documentaries. He twists the lock, opens the door, and nothing. The scratching stops instantly. The hallway is empty. The light is still on. No rat, no dog, no person. Nothing on the ceiling, nothing in the corners. Just silence. There's this weird mix of relief and panic inside me. On one hand, thank God, there's nothing there. On the other, if it wasn't there, where did it go? And what if opening the door just let it in? Eli, being Eli, steps fully into the hallway. He checks the staircase. He goes downstairs, looks in the kitchen, in the bathroom, even peeks through the window into that dark little outside room. He checks the front door. Everything is locked. Everything looks normal. He comes back up after a while and shrugs like, "There's nothing. It's fine." We close our bedroom door again. A few minutes later, the scratching starts up. Same door, same pattern. At that point, I'm holding back tears. My brain is just playing every horror movie trope I've ever seen on repeat. You know that scene where everyone investigates the noise, finds nothing, and then 5 minutes later something jumps out of the closet? That's exactly what it felt like. Lena and Eli keep trying to comfort me. It's probably the pipes. Maybe the wood is settling. It's the wind. All the classics. But none of it matches what we're hearing. Wood settling doesn't move around the doorknob. Pipes don't block the light under the door. By then, it's around 2 a.m., and I am absolutely not sleeping. I tell them straight up, I'm not closing my eyes with that thing out there. So we compromise. Eli helps me push our dresser against the door. It's not the world's heaviest dresser, but it's something. Mentally, it helps. If something tries the door again, at least it won't just swing open. Eventually, pure exhaustion wins. My body basically forces me to pass out. But the night isn't done with me yet. I wake up again sometime between 3:40 and 4 a.m., covered in cold sweat. You know when you bolt awake with that awful feeling like someone is standing right next to your bed? That's how it felt. I didn't hear anything this time. No scratching, no clicking. Just this deep, heavy dread, like the air in the room had changed again. People call it the witching hour, and honestly, in that moment, it felt exactly like the kind of time where everything is just wrong. I'm lying there, heart racing, too scared to move, absolutely convinced something is in the room with us now. Not outside the door, not in the hallway, but inside. I reach over and turn my little nightlight back on. Yeah, I have a nightlight at my big age. I'm not embarrassed. At that moment, it felt like a tiny shield between me and whatever might be watching. I kept that thing on until the first light of morning started creeping in through the curtains. I don't know how much I actually slept after that. It was more like dozing with one eye open. When the sun finally came up and the room was bright again, everything felt normal. No scratches on the door that we could see. No weird marks. The dresser was still in place. The hallway looked the same. The apartment looked like just our apartment. I'm not saying it was definitely something paranormal. Maybe there's some weird logical explanation, some animal we've never seen before, some strange building noise I don't know about. Honestly, at this point, I don't even care if the explanation is boring and logical or straight up supernatural. I just want something that makes sense, because lying awake with no answer, replaying the sound of those scratches over and over, that's the part that scares me the most. So, hey, I'm recording this on the 26th of October, 2025, and I want to tell you about something that happened over the last few nights. I'm from India. Right now I live in a small town in Maharashtra, and we just had Diwali. This year, the main celebrations were on the 19th and 20th of October. If you don't know, Diwali, is called the Festival of Lights. It's connected to the epic Ramayana, and it's usually such a happy, bright time. Diyas everywhere, sweets, family, all of that. But there's this other side people talk about too. They say Diwali night is heavy, spiritually heavy, that spirits are stronger, that people do black magic and witchcraft on that night. We're told not to leave clothes outside, not to keep shoes lying around, not to step over weird powders on the road. All that stuff. And in our house, we tie fresh mango and ashoka leaves on the door for protection. My grandma swears by it. So, before any of this started, I'd moved into a separate room to study because my exams had started. It became my little safe place, you know? My comfort room. I used to actually sleep better there than with everyone else. No fear, no weird vibes. Just me, my books, and my playlists. On Diwali night, the first night, my mom, who I'll call Anita here, told me, "Tonight you're not sleeping alone. Come to our room. It's not good to sleep alone on Diwali." I was stubborn, like peak stubborn. I told her I was fine, that I had to wake up early and I'd sleep better in my own room. She tried to convince me more. This is not good. This is not that kind of night. Listen to me. But I still didn't listen. I grabbed my phone, went to my room, and decided I'd sleep there alone. That first night wasn't dramatic or anything, but that's where the fear started. See, the door in my room sometimes makes these small noises. A light creak here, a little tap there. Our area had really heavy rains and mild flooding a while back, so there's dampness and moisture everywhere. Wood swells, walls crack, things expand and contract. Logically, it makes sense. But that night, with all the stories my mom had just told me echoing in my head, every tiny sound suddenly felt important. I kept telling myself, it's just the weather, it's just the wood, it's just in your head. And I did manage to brush it off and fall asleep. But a seed of fear got planted right there. Second night, 20th October. This was the second day of Diwali. Same kind of thing. I slept in my room again. The little creaks and taps were still there. And again, I tried to ignore them. But now, instead of feeling like random sounds, they were starting to feel noticed. Like my brain was waiting for them. Still, I got through the night. Third and fourth nights, 21st and 22nd October. These two nights were similar, but the feeling changed. The door kept making those soft creaks, nothing super loud or dramatic. But my fear started increasing bit by bit. You know when the room is quiet and your mind is not? The shadows look a little darker, the silence feels heavier. That's what it was like. By the fourth night, the fear became a little sharper. Not a full-blown panic, but like this constant uneasiness. I started double-checking things. Is the window locked? Is the door properly shut? Why does that corner look darker than usual? Nothing happened exactly, but inside, I wasn't calm anymore. Fifth night, 23rd October. This is where things got really weird for me. So evening comes, then night. Everything's normal at first. I get ready for bed in my room. The main light is off, and there's this small, warm, orange night bulb on. It usually makes the room look cozy. But that night, it just made everything look strange. Like the shadows were softer, but also more alive. I lay down on my bed. By the way, my mattress is on a wooden manja bed, and pulled my blanket up. I put on some random YouTube video for background noise, thinking it would help. Then I started noticing the door again. At first, it was the familiar, tiny creaks. I tried ignoring them, but my attention kept getting pulled back. And slowly, those little creaks started sounding less like random wood noises and more like knocks. I remember thinking, don't overthink. You just watched a horror movie. This is what happens. But the sounds kept going, and they started becoming clearer, more intentional. Meanwhile, everything in the room began to feel uncomfortable to look at. The Almira door was slightly open, just a small gap, but in that dim orange light, it looked like this dark slit, like something could peek through any second. My mattress had gotten a little flat in the middle over time, but that night, it didn't just look flat. It looked like it was sinking, like something heavy was sitting right there in the center, pressing it down. I actually got up and sat on the bed, just staring at it. And then, the knocking changed. It wasn't random anymore. It wasn't just creaking. I could hear it clearly now. Knock, knock. Then a pause. Knock, knock, knock. Another pause. Then knock, knock. It formed this pattern in my head. 2, 3, 2. Not super loud, but clear. Too clear to ignore. At this point, my heart was racing. My body felt tense, like every muscle was on alert. I tried to reason with myself again. The wind, the wood, the house settling, anything. But something inside me, this strong gut feeling, was just screaming, leave. Leave the room. Right now. It wasn't a gentle suggestion. It felt like a survival instinct. I was so scared I didn't even want to put my feet on the floor. My phone was right next to me, so I grabbed it and called Ria, who was literally in the next room. I didn't even bother texting. I just called and said, "Can you come to my rooms? Please, right now. Just stand outside my door." My voice was shaking and she could hear it. She didn't even ask too many questions, she just came. I still couldn't bring myself to walk to the door until I heard her voice from outside. "Hey, I'm here. Open it." The moment I unlocked that door and stepped out, it felt like my whole body could breathe again. I'm not exaggerating. It actually felt like leaving a locked cage. We walked back to her room together, and I remember thinking, I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was all in my head or something else, but I do know I'm not sleeping in there tonight. Even now, talking about it, I'm not claiming anything for sure. I don't know if it was just overthinking after a horror movie, the leftover energy of Diwali night, the house creaking from old damp wood, or something I can't explain. All I know is how it made me feel. Trapped, watched, and completely on edge in a room that used to be my safe place. So yeah, I've decided one thing for sure. My room definitely needs a deep cleaning, and maybe a proper cleansing too. Physically, energetically, everything. And next Diwali, if my mom tells me, "Don't sleep alone tonight," I think I'm actually going to listen. For a long time I lived with this tight knot in my chest. Years of intense anxiety, these deep fears I couldn't put into words, and a kind of inner pain that made even ordinary days feel heavy. On the outside, I was functioning. On the inside, I felt like I was always bracing for something terrible. My grandfather, my Nono Leo, was the one person who made me feel completely safe. We had this quiet understanding between us, like we didn't need many words to get each other. At the end of 2019, he started showing signs of dementia. It was subtle at first, forgetting small things, repeating the same story twice. Then it got worse. I stayed close to him all the way until he passed in 2021. I was there for hospital visits, confused conversations, and also for these unexpectedly tender moments, when he would squeeze my hand and suddenly look perfectly clear, just for a second, like he'd come back from far away to say, "I'm still here." After he died, I started dreaming about him. At first, they were just dreams, but then they became different. They were sharp, structured, almost more real than being awake. In these dreams, he was lucid, present, and so gentle. It started to feel like he wasn't just visiting, he was trying to show me something. Over time, I understood it as a kind of plan. A very big, very precise plan to save me. One afternoon, I went to visit his grave. I remember the sky was that pale, washed-out blue you get in early spring. Someone had put artificial roses there, bright and plastic, almost too perfect. And right in the middle of them, pushing through the gravel, there was a single, real dandelion. I don't know why, but it stopped me in my tracks. That night, I dreamt of him again. We were sitting at his old kitchen table. He looked at me with that same knowing gaze and said, almost playfully, "Next time you go there, blow on the dandelion. Do it as a sign that you want to be free." The next time I visited, I actually felt a bit silly, but I did it. I leaned down, took a breath, and blew the seeds into the air. As they scattered, something inside me shifted. Very quietly, but unmistakably. From that moment on, things began to speed up. I started receiving what I can only describe as concrete signs. Once, I was walking along a mountain trail in northern Italy, a place where I used to hike with my grandfather. The path was empty, quiet, and I was lost in my thoughts. Out of nowhere, a folded note fluttered down right in front of my feet, like it had fallen from the sky. I picked it up. Inside, written in a shaky hand, were expressions my grandfather used to say only to me. Little phrases, almost like our private language. It felt impossible to dismiss as a coincidence. And that wasn't the only time something like that happened. Around this period, I started having out-of-body experiences. They were different from dreams. In them, I found myself in his garden, the one from my childhood. Everything was exactly the way it used to be. The jasmine climbing up the wall, the smell of damp earth after he watered the plants in the evening, the way the sunlight filtered through the fig tree. And he was there. Sometime later, I went to visit a care facility, just to spend time with the residents, to help out a bit. That's where I met an elderly man named Emilio. From the very first second, something about him reminded me of my grandfather. Not his face exactly, but the way he moved his hands when he talked, the way his eyes softened when he listened, the rhythm of his speech. Being near him felt oddly familiar, almost like sitting beside an echo. One day, I got this strong urge, almost a push, to show him a photo of my grandfather. So I took out my phone, found a picture, and held it out to him. He looked at the screen for a long time. Then he smiled and said, very calmly, "Oh, I know him. I know him very well." I felt this wave of chills run through my whole body. From then on, Emilio started telling me things. Little truths about my life, about struggles I hadn't spoken out loud, about fears I kept hidden. He would make very specific predictions, tiny details about upcoming days, situations, encounters, and they kept happening exactly as he said. But what mattered more than the predictions was what he helped me see. Day by day, conversation by conversation, he guided me to this understanding. My grandfather had a plan to help free me from my anxiety, that there was nothing random about the way our lives had intertwined, or even about the way his illness had unfolded. I began to affectionately call Emilio the Herald, because it felt like he was carrying messages that didn't entirely belong to him, like he was delivering something that had been prepared for me. Through all of this, the dreams, the signs, the garden visits, the meetings with the Herald, a strange idea began to take shape inside me. As unusual as it sounds, it felt like my grandfather had, in some way, offered up his mental clarity so that I could eventually reclaim mine. I started to see his dementia not just as a cruel, senseless disease, but as a kind of sacrifice. Almost as if, on some level I don't fully understand, he had carried the confusion, the fragmentation, so that I could one day find coherence, so that the pain I carried inside me could finally loosen its grip. I'm not saying I have everything figured out. I'm not saying I have all the answers. But what I know is that I am not the same person I was before all this started. My anxiety isn't completely gone, but it no longer rules me. There's more space inside me, more softness, more trust. And when I feel that familiar knot in my chest trying to tighten again, I remember the dandelion. I picture those seeds lifting into the air, carrying my will to be free to a place I can't see, but somehow still believe in. And in those moments, I feel my grandfather close. Not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as someone who loved me so much that he wove a whole hidden plan through illness, symbols, strangers, and dreams, so that, little by little, I could learn how to live again. So, okay, let me just walk you through this because I'm still trying to make sense of it myself. This happened early this morning, out in the Alabama hills. It was around, I don't know, 2-ish? Something like 2:15, 2:20 a.m. And I can't stop replaying it. I grew up on the east side, born in Independence, raised in June Lake. So I've been up and down that stretch of 395 my whole life, almost 3 decades now. A couple years back, rent got ridiculous, so I built out a van and moved into it. Honestly, it suits me. I love being out in the middle of nowhere. I feel more relaxed when I'm away from other people, tucked down some dirt road where nobody's going to bother me. Last night, I was driving back up from Southern California and decided to break up the drive by camping in the Alabama hills. The plan was pretty simple. Pull in late, sleep a few hours, then wake up, have some coffee, read a bit, wander around the rocks, and then finish the drive back home to June. By the time I found a spot, it was already late, like 12:45 or so. I ended up on this little spur road on the opposite side from the creek. No trees, no water, just those weird, rounded boulders and sand. I remember thinking, perfect. It's ugly but quiet. I'll crash. I probably fell asleep around 1:15. At some point later, I kind of floated up out of sleep because I started hearing birds. And not just one or two. It sounded like morning. Like I was camped by a lush creek with cottonwoods and willows, and the sun was just about to come up and everything was waking up at once. But that wasn't where I was. I was in this barren little turnout on the rocky side, nothing around me that would have been bird heaven. I rolled over, grabbed my phone, and the time was 2:27 a.m. And I remember frowning at the screen like, no way, it's the middle of the night. But I was so tired that a part of me just went, whatever, weird, and I tried to drift back down. Then the birds faded out, and almost immediately it was crickets. Just this wall of cricket noise, like someone had turned one sound off and switched another one on. It was loud, way louder than I remembered when I parked. It felt artificial, or like somebody was messing with the volume knob on nature. I barely got through the thought, did I just not notice this before? When I felt something lean into the side of my van. You know that feeling of weight pressing in? The metal flexed just a little, and then this sound. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a scream, a whistle, and a wail all at the same time. High and piercing, but there was this weird depth under it. It felt like it went straight through my chest. And then my van started shaking. Not just rocking a bit, full-on violent shaking. Earlier this year, a bunch of my friends thought it would be hilarious to mess with me and rocked the van back and forth while I was inside. That was annoying, but it felt like people. It was playful, rhythmic. This was not that. This felt like the whole van was in a storm, like something huge had grabbed it from every direction at once. If that was an earthquake, it was bigger than anything I felt in California, and I've been here my whole life. The movement wasn't rolling. It was like the ground and the van were each trying to go in different directions. And I just broke. Usually, when bears mess with my van, I know what to do. I grew up with black bears around. If they try to get into my vehicle, I'll yell. I'll hit the side. I'll bang on the window. I've always been able to stand my ground with them. But in that moment, I couldn't move. I wanted to scream stop and slam my hand against the glass, and I just couldn't. My body would not cooperate. I was lying there, totally rigid, with tears pouring down my face, listening to this thing happen around me. The fear was different too. I'm used to normal fear, adrenaline, heart racing, brain making plans. This wasn't that. This felt like something heavy in the air, pressing down on me from the outside. Like the whole space around the van was saturated with this, I don't know, presence. It felt evil. I don't use that word lightly, but that's the only way I can describe it. It didn't feel like my own anxiety spiraling. It felt like stepping into a room where something terrible has happened, and your body knows before your brain does. Just this objective, crushing dread. I honestly thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to die here, in my stupid van, in this random turnout off Whitney Portal Road. I have no idea how long it lasted. It might have been 30 seconds. It might have been a few minutes. In my head, it felt like forever. The shaking finally stopped, the sound cut off, and then there was nothing. No crickets, no birds, not even wind. The silence was almost worse than the noise. It was that thick, ringing silence you get after something explodes, where your ears are trying to catch up. I stayed under my blanket like a little kid, shaking and sobbing, listening to absolutely nothing. After a while, I'm guessing 10 minutes, maybe more, I realized I couldn't just stay there. The fear was still there, but underneath it, there was this clear thought. You need to leave. Now. So I forced myself to move. I got some clothes on, grabbed my little combo knife/shovel I used to dig cat holes, and cracked the van door open as quietly as I could. Part of me was terrified something would be standing right there, but outside, it looked normal. I turned my headlamp on low and started checking around my van. I expected to see something. Bear tracks, shoe prints, fresh tire tracks, anything. The dirt out there usually records whoever's been around. Nothing. No bear prints, no human prints I hadn't already made, no new tire marks. I hadn't heard another vehicle pull in or leave while all this was happening either. If a truck had been messing with me, I would have heard it drive off. That was the moment my fear turned into this cold, unsettled feeling. I climbed back in, started the engine, and just left. I didn't even bother pulling my bedding together. I just threw it aside and drove. When I finally got service, I pulled over and checked the earthquake reports for that time, somewhere around 2:30 to 3 a.m. in the Lone Pine area. Nothing. No recorded quakes that matched what I felt. Driving down from Whitney Portal, past town, I could still feel that oppressive heaviness sitting in my chest. And then, as I got farther south on 395, it started to loosen. By the time I was passing Manzanar, it felt like whatever had been on me was finally wearing off. Normally, I hate sleeping at rest stops. I don't like being packed in with strangers. I'm way more nervous about people trying something than I am about animals. But when I pulled into that rest stop south of Big Pine and saw other cars with people sleeping in them, I could have cried from relief all over again. Nothing. I checked again in the morning light, really carefully. No new gouges, no dented panels, nothing bent or twisted. From the outside, it was like the night had been completely uneventful. And that's, honestly, the part that keeps bothering me. If it had clearly been a bear, or an earthquake, or some drunk person messing around, I'd still be shaken up, but I would have a box to put it in. Instead, I'm left with this experience that feels like it doesn't fit anywhere. For what it's worth, I was camped just east of this rock formation people call Nightfall Rock, in a little side canyon folks around there sometimes refer to as Ranger's Cut in the Alabama hills. I know it's close to LADWP land, and yeah, I probably wasn't supposed to be exactly where I was. The plan was to pull in late, leave early, and just catch a few hours of sleep. After what happened, I don't think I was there even 3 hours total. I'm not trying to jump straight to, it was something supernatural. That's not usually how my brain works. The real reason I'm telling this is because I'm hoping someone who knows the Lone Pine area better, especially around that part of the hills, might have some stories or some kind of explanation. Maybe there's local lore, or maybe someone's had something similar happen out there. Right now, I'm just rattled. It was honestly traumatizing. I've never felt fear like that, and I've never cried the way I did in that van. So yeah, that's what happened. If you've heard anything about that area, or if you've had your own weird night out near Ranger's Cut or around Nightfall Rock, I'd really like to hear it. Okay, so this all really starts a long time ago, when I was still a teenager. I grew up in one of those tiny towns where there's absolutely nothing to do. You know the kind. One blinking stoplight, the same 3 restaurants, everybody knows who your grandparents dated. Back then, my friends and I were really into urban exploring and chasing ghost stories. If someone even whispered that a place might be haunted, we were already in somebody's car, halfway there. There was this old bridge just outside of town, out in an unincorporated community folks around there called Willow Creek. The story was that if you drove onto the bridge at night, your engine would die or your headlights would flicker out. And some of the older folks swore they'd seen a woman step out in front of their car, just standing there in the middle of the road. So of course we had to go. We decided we were going on Halloween night because apparently we were determined to make the horror movie setup as obvious as possible. There were 5 of us: me, Lena, Marisol, Derek, and Cal. I remember we were getting ready to leave my house, and I had this weird knot in my stomach. I turned to Cal and said, "I don't know, this trip feels different. Like, whatever's out there already knows we're coming." He stared at me for a second and said, "Yeah, I kind of feel that too." But we laughed it off. It was Halloween. We were spooking ourselves, right? On the way out there, a couple of us started passing a bottle around. Lena was always the one who overdid it, and she was already getting loud. I didn't want her to get wasted and ruin the whole night, so I took the bottle from her and stuffed it in my bag like, "All right, that's enough, party girl." We turned off the main road onto this old red dirt road that twisted through the trees. That's when Derek, who was driving, slowed down and said, "Hey, look." I glanced up from the passenger seat, and the road ahead was just swallowed in this thick fog. Not a gentle little mist either. It was like a wall of smoke. I remember muttering, "Well, that's convenient," trying to sound brave. Nobody was really talking at that point. The air felt heavy, like when a storm's about to break, but there wasn't any thunder, just that quiet, thick kind of silence. We rolled onto the bridge and Derek stopped us right in the middle. We all sat there for a second, waiting for something dramatic to happen. But nothing. No screaming ghost, no flashing lights, just the hum of the engine. Finally, I said, "Why don't we get out and look around?" Everyone kind of shrugged and agreed, because we hadn't come all that way to just sit in the car. Lena climbed out from the back seat and stumbled a little. I hurried over and grabbed her arm. "Easy," I said, and we started walking together. We were maybe a car length away from Derek's old sedan when the headlights suddenly blinked off, then on again. Marisol whispered, Nope, let's go. I've seen this movie." But Cal shook his head. "Isn't this literally why we drove out here? We should at least look around." Lena decided she wanted to go down under the bridge, by the water. Of course. So I motioned to Derek to grab her other arm, and the three of us started walking down the little slope. As we got closer to the creek, Lena suddenly lifted her head and started talking to the darkness like it owed her money. She goes, "So what, you're not going to show yourself? You scared or something?" Then, "Come on, do something." But she just kept going, waving her arms around, calling whatever was there a coward. The closer we got to the water, the more I felt this static, like the air itself was buzzing under my skin. I knew, deep down, that she had crossed a line. Lena inhaled to start another taunt, and before she could even finish the sentence, something shoved her. Hard. It wasn't like tripping on a rock. She was ripped straight out of mine and Derek's grip. 1 second she was between us, the next she flew forward and slammed onto her knees, right at the edge of the cold, black water. She screamed, "It pushed me!" I snapped, "I told you not to provoke anything. You never disrespect a spirit." My stomach did this slow roll, and I got really nauseous. That happens to me sometimes around whatever this kind of thing is. I've always been a little sensitive. Cal saw the look on my face and hurried over. "Hey, what are you feeling? Do we need to leave?" Before I could answer, an image slammed into my mind, like someone just dropped a photograph right behind my eyes. I saw a woman standing in front of me. Dark hair, wet clothes clinging to her. Her face was tired, sad, angry, all at the same time. I swallowed and said, "She's here. We need to go. And Lena, don't say another word." We scrambled back up the incline toward the car. As we were getting in, Derek froze with his hand on the door and whispered, "I just saw her. She was right there by the railing. Oh my God." We piled into the car, and as soon as Derek turned the key, the engine died. Just went dead. He tried again. Nothing. Third time, it finally coughed, sputtered, and came back to life. The way the road was laid out, we had to drive off the bridge, pull into this little gravel patch to turn around, and then go back over the bridge to get home. So we eased forward, turned around, and started crossing it again. Right as we got to the middle of the bridge, every light on the car went out. No headlights, no dash lights, nothing. Just darkness and fog. I panicked, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and leaned half my body out the window, holding the light out so Derek could see the road at least a little. It was ridiculous and terrifying at the same time. Eventually, we made it back into town, all shaking and pretending we weren't. We went to my house, ordered pizza, we needed something aggressively normal, and decided to just put on some movies and crash there. But you could tell we were all still wired. Nobody wanted to admit how freaked out they were, but the energy was off. We made this giant blanket pile on the living room floor, all of us sleeping there together like little kids at a sleepover. At some point in the night, I heard someone say my name, soft but clear. Alex. I opened my eyes, looked around. Everyone was out cold. No one had moved. I kept drifting in and out of this restless sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, my dreams shoved me back onto that bridge. The fog, the water, that woman. Before the sun had fully come up, the doorbell rang. It was so early, it made all of us jump upright. I looked at the clock. It was 6 a.m. I got up, crept to the front door, and peeked through the window. Standing on the porch was a longtime family friend, my Aunt Rosa. Now, she's not my aunt by blood, but we've called her that our whole lives. And she's a clairvoyant. That's just always been part of who she is. I opened the door and let her in. She looked at me with this narrowed, suspicious expression and didn't say a word. Then she went straight past me and headed up the stairs. "Alex!" she shouted. We all sat up at once. "Yeah?" I answered, heart racing. Aunt Rosa appeared behind my mom, calm as anything, and asked, "Alex, where were you last night?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to lie, but this is a woman who has known things about me I'd never said out loud. If she was asking, she probably already knew. My mom said, "Get upstairs and talk to your Aunt Rosa. Now." So I dragged myself upstairs to my room. Aunt Rosa was already sitting on my bed like she'd been waiting there for an hour. She patted the mattress. "Sit," she said. "Where did you kids go last night?" Because she followed you home. My skin went cold. "We went to the bridge," I started. She cut me off. "The one out on Willow Creek Road?" I nodded. She shook her head and sighed. "Why would you go out there, after what happened?" I blinked at her. "What happened?" She called out, "Maria, come here a minute." My mom came into the room, already looking guilty. Aunt Rosa asked her, "You never told Alex about what happened out on that bridge?" My mom shook her head and said quietly, "No, I didn't think it was my place. I thought their dad would have told them." My mom sat down on the other side of me, and I remember the bed dipping under her weight. She took a deep breath. "In the late 50s, she began, "you had a cousin on your dad's side. Her name was Elena. She'd gone through a rough divorce and started working at a little bar near Willow Creek. It was close enough that she could walk home and still keep an eye on her kids." She paused, looking down at her hands. "One night, 2 men followed her when she left. They did terrible, terrible things to her. Then they threw her off the bridge and into the water. I just sat there, stunned. I'd never heard any of this before. Why would she follow me?" I asked, turning to Aunt Rosa. "I didn't provoke her. I tried to be respectful." Aunt Rosa said, gently but firmly, "Because she knew you were family. She recognized the blood, and she's still trying to protect her children. She's been stuck there, watching, guarding, for a long time. We need to help send her to the light. Tonight." Later that day, my friends and I went to my great-grandmother's house, Nana June, to ask about Elena. As soon as we mentioned her name, Nana's whole face softened. She pulled out an old box of photos. There were pictures of Elena, smiling in those soft, faded colors, and photos of her kids, 2 little boys with crooked grins. Nana told us that Elena's ex-husband had paid those men to kill her, and that all 3 of them were now long dead. Her voice shook when she said it, but there was this fierce anger underneath her grief. We asked if we could borrow the photos for the night, and she agreed, as long as we brought them back. That evening, we went to Aunt Rosa's house. She and my mom had set up candles in the dining room, a big one in the center, and smaller ones around it. The pictures of Elena and her children were laid out carefully on the table. We all sat down, my friends included. Nobody was joking around anymore. Aunt Rosa closed her eyes and started speaking softly, calling Elena by name, telling her who was at the table, telling her that I was her blood. She said, "You followed Alex because you knew they were yours, your family. You were trying to protect your children, weren't you? The room got noticeably colder. It was like someone opened a door to winter. Then, while we were all staring, one of the photos, the one with Elena's children, slid a few inches across the table. No breeze, no one touching it. Aunt Rosa looked at the photo and said, "Elena, listen to me. Your ex-husband and the two men who hurt you, they're dead. They're gone. They are not near your boys. They are not near anyone. You don't have to stand guard anymore." She spoke to her for what felt like a long time, telling her there was light waiting for her, that she could be with her children again someday if she crossed over. She told her that staying there, trapped in anger and fear, wasn't helping them anymore. The temperature kept dropping until I could see the faintest bit of my breath. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. I closed my eyes for a moment, and there she was again, clear as before. Elena. She looked so tired, but there was a softness around her now. She looked at me, and I heard, not with my ears, but somewhere inside, a quiet, "Thank you." In my mind, I saw her turn away from the bridge, away from the dark water, and walk toward this soft, bright light. No drama, no choir of angels, just relief. Right then, the largest candle on the table went out all at once. No flicker, no sputter, just gone. And almost immediately, the cold in the room lifted. The air felt normal again. For me, that was all the confirmation I needed. I knew she was gone. Not erased, not forgotten, just finally at peace. People around there still tell stories about Willow Creek Bridge. Old legends stick around, you know? But as far as I've heard, there hasn't been any real paranormal activity out there since that night. A while back, I drove out that way again. Just me, in my own car, on a quiet afternoon. The bridge looked smaller than I remembered. They usually do, when you go back as an adult. I pulled over, got out, and stood by the railing, looking down at the water. No fog, no static in the air. Just the sound of the creek moving along like it always had. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared or watched. I felt calm. I whispered, "I hope you're with them now." And in my chest, it felt like the end of a sentence that had taken decades to finish. That's when I knew, in my bones, that she wasn't trapped there anymore. She was finally home. So, let me tell you about my house. I live in this 2-story place that was built in the late 70s. It's nothing super fancy, just an older family home in a quiet neighborhood. Before we moved in, only one other family ever lived here. It was an older married couple. The wife eventually moved to a nursing home, and her husband, a man named Frank, passed away not long after. Nobody's really sure if he died in the house or at the hospital. That's kind of where the story starts. From the beginning, there were all these small, weird things that we just brushed off. The pictures in the upstairs hallway, they never stay straight. You can fix them, line them all up perfectly, and then a few hours later they're tilted again, every single one. And then there are the footsteps. Downstairs we've got these metal vents in the ceiling. Even when the heat or the AC isn't running, we'll hear footsteps walking across the vents above, like the sound of someone pacing back and forth upstairs. At first we blamed it on the house settling, or maybe the cat, but the cat is terrified of the upstairs, so yeah. Those were the little things. Annoying, unsettling, but easy to ignore. The bigger stuff started with my grandma. My grandma, Nana Rose, was staying with us for a few nights. When I came home one evening, she pulled me aside and said, "You know, you scared me last night." I was confused. I hadn't even been home. She told me she'd heard my voice calling her, clear as day, from the basement. Not once, but 2 nights in a row. Just, "Nana, can you come down here?" And she said the tone sounded exactly like me. Not just any voice, mine. The thing is, the first night she heard it, I was at my friend Mia's house. The second night, I was working late. I wasn't anywhere near the basement or the house at all. About a year after that, everything kind of exploded into this cluster of activity. It was like something in the house had been building up and suddenly decided, okay, it's showtime. The first big incident happened at the top of the stairs. It was me, my little brother Josh, and my stepdad, Mark. We were standing at the landing, just talking about something stupid, like what to eat for dinner or whatever. Right above the stairwell, on the wall, we had this big framed photo. We'd hung it really securely with these two hooks, like you had to lift it up and then out to take it off. There's no way it could just slide off on its own. In the middle of our conversation, the picture suddenly lifted. We watched it tilt forward, as if someone had grabbed the top of the frame and pulled it away from the wall. Then it came off the hooks completely and crashed all the way down the stairs to the bottom. We all just froze. Josh bolted, and I remember Mark and I just staring at each other with that, "Did you see that?" look. We both knew how we'd hung that picture. There was no draft, no one bumped the wall, nothing. It moved like someone had physically picked it up and thrown it. The next night, I wasn't home again. I was staying at a friend's house. My mom, Lisa, and Mark were asleep downstairs in the living room, back when we had the couches pulled out into beds. We have these little hanging bells on the front and back doors that our dogs ring when they need to go out. They jingle in a really particular way when the door opens. Mark said he woke up because he heard the front door. Not just the bells jingling, but that heavy, recognizable sound of the door opening and closing. After that, he heard slow, heavy footsteps walking across the floor upstairs. Steady, human footsteps moving down the hallway. When he came back down, Mom was still half asleep. She said she hadn't heard anything. Not the door, not the footsteps, not even Mark running around above her. The night after that, things got even weirder. My mom and Mark were upstairs this time, watching TV in the loft. The dogs were lying next to them, totally calm. Out of nowhere, they both heard it. This clear sound of a little girl giggling downstairs. Not just a vague sound, a child's laugh. They looked at each other at the same time like, "Did you hear that too?" And then they both ran downstairs together. The downstairs was empty. No TVs on, no windows open, nothing. As they turned to go back up the stairs, they both heard these tiny footsteps on the stairs behind them, like a small person running up the stairs right on their heels. But when they turned around, nothing there. Later that night, when they went to bed, my mom was lying there in the dark, trying to fall asleep. Mark was next to her, already out. She said she suddenly heard heavy footsteps, like someone running, up and down the hallway upstairs. Not slow, not shuffling. Full-on running. Mark didn't hear a thing. He still got up, walked the hall, checked the rooms. Same story. Nobody there, house locked up, dogs still asleep. 2 nights after that, it was my turn. And honestly, I think my experience might be the creepiest one, at least for me. Back then, my bedroom was upstairs, right at the end of the hallway, near the back door that opens onto this small balcony. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone, kind of in that half-asleep zone. The house was quiet. Everyone else was downstairs. First, I heard the bells on the back door jingle. Just once, like the door had moved. Then I heard slow footsteps coming up the stairs. You know that feeling when you're sure you're home with other people, but suddenly you feel alone? It was like that. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and walked across the hall, right past my door, toward the back door. I heard the doorknob jiggle, like someone was trying to open it. It clicked a few times, like they were really trying, but the lock wouldn't budge. Then the footsteps came back down the hallway. They stopped near the light switches by the bathroom. I heard the click of the switches flipping on and off, over and over. It felt like it went on forever, probably 20, 30 times at least. But no lights came on. My room stayed dark. The strip of light under my door never changed. Then the footsteps went into the bathroom. I heard this soft rustling, like someone opening cabinets, moving things around, maybe going through drawers. Bottles clinking, something brushing against the counter. Then sudden silence. No footsteps leaving, no door closing, just nothing. A few minutes passed. It felt like an hour. Then I heard it, breathing, right outside my bedroom door. Not the house creaking, not the heater. Actual breathing, slow and heavy, like someone standing on the other side of the door with their face almost against it. I completely froze. My eyes were open, but I was too scared to move. My throat felt tight, and my eyes started to water. I remember silently crying because I didn't want whatever it was to know I was awake. The breathing stopped for a second. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. And then, clear as anything, I heard my doorknob turn. I heard the metal click, the latch shift, like the door was opening. But the door didn't move. No light came in, no shadow, nothing. It sounded open, but it stayed shut. I didn't sleep at all that night. After that, the intense stuff calmed down for a while. We still had the tilted pictures and the occasional footsteps, but it was quieter. Until about a year later, in the middle of our conversation, I saw a man walk past the doorway. He didn't look ghostly or transparent or anything. He looked solid enough that my brain didn't even immediately register him as wrong. He was tall, wearing a long dark coat and a kind of old-fashioned hat. Like a top hat, but not cartoonish, more like something from the 40s. He walked into the kitchen doorway, turned like he was heading toward the sink, and then kept going out of my line of sight. I stopped talking. My mom stopped too, at the exact same time. After a second, she turned around and looked toward the doorway and then back at me. I said, "Did you just see that?" And she said, "The man with the coat?" We both described him the same way. Tall, wearing a dark trench coat, some kind of hat, moving calmly, like he belonged there. Mark, meanwhile, saw nothing. He just said the air suddenly felt heavy and weird, like walking into a room where someone had just been arguing. Since that night, nothing big has happened. The pictures still tilt. Every now and then we hear footsteps on the vents or across the hall when nobody's up there. It's like whatever is here is quieter now, but not gone. I don't know if it's Frank, the original owner, or someone else, or maybe even more than one someone. I don't fully understand what we've been experiencing, but I'll be honest with you. Even on the calmest nights, when the house is quiet and everything seems normal, there's still this feeling. Like somewhere in the hall, just out of sight, that man in the coat might still be walking by. So, I've seen ghosts pretty much my whole life. That's just kind of been my normal. But this one still makes my stomach drop when I think about her. This all happened, almost 10 years ago now. I don't even live in the same country anymore, so I'm sure some details are a little fuzzy. But to the best of my memory, this is my creepiest encounter. I was 17, and my mom was driving my friend Sam home one night. It was late, one of those quiet stretches of road where the streetlights are way too far apart. We were just talking about school and music, nothing special, when I saw her. Right at the edge of the road, in our headlights, there was a woman. Long dark hair hanging in her face, a faded maroon t-shirt and jeans. She wasn't walking though. She was crawling out toward the middle of the road. I remember sitting up straighter, getting ready to say something like, "Mom, is she okay?" But as we got closer, everything felt wrong. My mom's face didn't change. Sam didn't react at all. No one slowed down. No one gasped. It was just me, staring at this crawling woman in the headlights as we drove right past her like she wasn't there. And as we passed her, she turned her head toward me. I realized I was the only one who could see her. We kept going, and I just sort of swallowed it and shrugged it off. At that point, seeing ghosts wasn't new to me. I'd been seeing them for as long as I could remember. So I filed her away as another random sighting and tried not to think too hard about why she'd been dragging herself into the road. About a week later, it was late, and I was lying in bed. My bedroom door was open, and the soft glow from the bathroom nightlight was just barely lighting up the living room. The couch was pushed almost flat against the wall, right outside my door, like there was no space back there. Not even our cat could fit behind it. That's why it was so weird when I saw movement in that exact spot. At first, it was just a little shift in the shadows. Then, slowly, a hand appeared, pale fingers curling around the edge of the couch. Then an arm, elbow bending unnaturally as it slid out from behind a place no one should have been able to fit. I watched her crawl out from this impossible gap, inch by inch. Long, dark hair, that same maroon t-shirt, the same jeans. The crawling woman, right outside my bedroom. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared. Like, frozen but pretending I wasn't scared. So I did what a lot of us do when we're terrified. I turned over in bed, faced the wall, and tried to pretend I hadn't just seen a woman crawl out from behind the couch. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to look again. A few minutes later, I rolled back over. She was gone. I forced myself to go to sleep after that, but I definitely did not sleep well. A couple days later, I told my mom about her. We were watching a movie in the living room, lights off, just the TV flickering. I was like, "So, I've been seeing this woman," and I started describing her. Right in the middle of my sentence, my mom suddenly sucked in a breath and jumped up. She slapped the light switch on and just stared toward the front door. I asked, What happened?" She said, "I just saw a woman with long dark hair crawling by the front door." That was the first time we both admitted seeing the same thing. It wasn't until I was older, like late teens and now as an adult, that we actually started talking about it openly, swapping stories, comparing what we'd seen. And yeah, sometimes we see the exact same spirits. We've moved a lot over the years. Different apartments, different houses, different cities. For anyone thinking carbon monoxide, trust me, I appreciate the concern, and I always tell people to check their detectors because that stuff really can kill you. But in our case, it doesn't really add up. I'll see the same ghosts in completely different locations, sometimes years apart. Anyway, the crawling woman. We both saw her, and she was creepy in that kind of The Grudge or The Ring way, except she always had jeans and that t-shirt. Not a long white dress or anything dramatic, just unsettlingly normal clothes. Now, I don't usually get recurring nightmares. Even the scary dreams I do have, I'm rarely scared inside the dream. It's more like I wake up and go, "Wow, that was messed up," and then move on with my day. But one night, I had a dream about her. And that one got under my skin. In the dream, I was in the basement of my childhood home, hanging out with friends. We were playing video games, being loud, doing the usual teen stuff. Then there was this noise from upstairs, one of those sounds where everyone goes quiet at the same time. We all looked at each other, freaked out, and bolted for the stairs. Somewhere between the basement and the kitchen, my friends just disappeared. You know how dreams are. They were there, and then they weren't, like the story forgot about them. I ended up alone in the kitchen. That's when my cat, Pumpkin, this chubby orange guy I loved to pieces, trotted in, meowing and rubbing against my leg. I relaxed a little. I bent down to pet him. Then another pumpkin walked in, and another. and another. Soon the entire kitchen was filled with identical pumpkins, just copies of the same cat walking around my feet, weaving between my legs, staring up at me with the same wide eyes. It was like the dream zoomed in and everything was cats and silence and my own breathing. And then I saw her. The crawling woman was standing this time, not on the floor, but right in front of me. And I was suddenly backed up against the wall, body stuck like someone had pressed pause. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The cats were gone, like they'd never been there. She started walking toward me, slow and deliberate. I remember thinking, how am I going to get out of this? Because I knew, even in the dream, that she wanted to hurt me. There was this heavy, hateful feeling coming off her in waves. Right when she got close, the front door slammed open with this huge crack. A man in a worn leather jacket kicked the door in. I never forgot that detail. His jacket and his boots. He strode in like he belonged there, grabbed my arm, and yanked me away from her. We rushed out of the house together, and suddenly we weren't in my neighborhood anymore. We were walking down this endless, empty road. As we walked, I could feel myself starting to wake up, like my awareness was shifting. I turned to him and asked, "What just happened? Who is she?" He looked at me, and his voice was calm but serious. He said, "She wants to kill you. She wants you dead, but first she wants to hurt you. She wants you to suffer before she kills you." His words echoed in my head as I woke up. I remember looking at the clock, around 8 a.m. Not exactly the classic witching hour, but there we were. The same dream. Basement, friends, noise, the scramble upstairs, the kitchen, pumpkin, more pumpkins, too many pumpkins. The crawling woman, frozen against the wall, the door slamming open, the man in the leather jacket. Only this time, when he grabbed my arm and pulled me out of the house, he didn't say anything. We walked that same endless road, but he just stayed beside me, quiet. And yet I knew, he knew, that I remembered what he'd told me the first time. "I wake up faster," is the only way I can describe it. Like he was getting better at pulling me out. When I woke up, I was so grateful he'd shown up again. This random stranger in my dream who felt not random at all. And then, anticlimactic as it might sound, I never saw her again. I was terrified to go to sleep the next night, expecting round 3, but she never came back. No more crawling woman in the living room, no more nightmare basement, no more hateful presence. Over time, I started to understand something else. That man in the leather jacket wasn't just some dream character. He was a spirit too. He's followed me now to 5 different homes, different cities, different jobs, different everything. But he's always there in the background, especially when something nasty tries to bother me at night. His name is Elias. In the waking world, he usually appears as a shadow man, tall, solid, but never fully detailed, like he's standing in a doorway where the light doesn't reach. Elias has stepped in more than once when spirits tried to attack me in my sleep. He's been doing that for about 8 years now. I do practice witchcraft, but I want to make this part clear. I haven't bound him to me, and I won't. I don't own him. He stays because he wants to, and I'm incredibly grateful for his protection, but I'm not going to force it. If he ever chooses to leave, that's his decision. I'd feel a lot less confident without him, honestly, but he's not my pet or my tool. He's my, I don't know, guardian? Friend? Something in that space. I still don't know what the crawling woman's deal was. I don't know why she zeroed in on me, why she wanted to hurt me so badly, or how exactly Elias managed to kick her out of my life so completely. I just know I haven't seen her since. No more recurring nightmares. No more women crawling out from behind couches that are flush against the wall. Just silence where she used to be. And the funny part is, for all that buildup, Most of my ghost encounters end kind of abruptly like that. No big dramatic showdown, no explanation, no closure. Ghosts just come and go. Some hang around for a little while, a few stay for years, and most move on without ever telling you who they were or what they wanted. I don't go looking for them. I don't advertise myself as psychic or offer services or anything. Honestly, I think it's rude to bother the dead on purpose. They've already done the whole living thing. They deserve some peace. So I mostly don't talk to them. I don't try to get their attention. I just live my life and hope they're doing their thing on the other side. But this story? This one still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. I do not like whoever she was. I hope she finds peace someday, really. Because being that angry, that focused on hurting someone, that can't be a good existence for a spirit. I know there's no big cinematic ending here. No, and then we discovered she died on that very road, or we found her name in an old newspaper. Nothing like that. I don't have an explanation, and I probably... Hey everyone, welcome to that Paranormal M channel. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the latest videos. I'm so happy I get to do what I love most, sitting here and telling you about paranormal experiences from all over. And what makes me even happier is knowing these stories can help you relax and sleep better. So don't hesitate to share your own paranormal experiences with me. You know how every neighborhood has that one neighbor? Yeah. So ever since I was a kid, we've had this one woman across the street. I'll call her Mrs. Drummond. She's hard to describe without sounding dramatic, but she just radiates this mean-spirited energy. The kind of person who seems to get actual joy out of other people's problems. She's always been like that, gossiping, whispering, twisting stories, saying cruel things with this sweet little smile on her face. If you saw her from a distance, you'd think, oh, just a sweet old lady with her cup of tea. But once you get closer, it's different. She's about 76 now, I think. The weird thing is, she looks younger than she did when I was a teenager. I know that sounds impossible, but I went through some old photos once, like from family barbecues and stuff where she's in the background, and compared them to how she looks now. And I swear to you, she looks fresher, brighter, less tired, almost like she's aging in reverse. My family still invites her over sometimes for tea. I think they just like the drama, honestly, the gossip. I never understood it. As a kid, I was terrified of her, and I couldn't even explain why. It was just her vibe. You know when someone walks into a room and the air feels heavier? That was her. Anyway, let me tell you about the Clovers. In the summer, she likes to sit in my backyard. She'll just stare at the grass, super quiet, like she's watching something only she can see. After about 15-20 minutes, she'll suddenly go, "Oh, I've got a little present for you." And every single time, she hands me a 4-leaf clover. Now, that'd be cute if it was once or twice, but she does this constantly. And it's not just one clover. If you look around where she was sitting, there'll be a little pile of them. 8, 10, sometimes more. All 4-leaf clovers. Every time. I don't even know how that's statistically possible. It's like the grass just gives them to her. So when I was about 16, I was going through a really rough patch. You know that age where everything feels heavy and permanent even though it isn't? I remembered the clovers and thought, okay, maybe I'll just keep one. For luck. Whatever. I picked one she'd given me and tucked it into the little clear pocket in my wallet, the one where people usually put a photo. For a few days, I carried it around everywhere. And then one night, I was sitting alone and it hit me. This came from her, from Mrs. Drummond. And suddenly it didn't feel like a good luck charm anymore. It felt wrong. So I took my wallet, walked down to this little river near my place. It's more like a wide stream, really. And I pulled the clover out. I remember holding it between my fingers and thinking, okay, that's it. I'm done with this. And I threw it into the water. I didn't do it secretly or anything. 2 of my friends were with me, Marco and Tess. They watched me throw it in, We even joked about it on the way home, like, "There goes your cursed clover, dude," that kind of thing. The next morning, I was getting ready to go out. I opened my wallet to grab some cash, and there it was, the same clover, in the same pocket. I can't even explain the feeling. It wasn't like a jump scare. It was that slow, sinking cold that starts in your chest and moves outwards. I just stared at it for a few seconds thinking, no way. I'm misremembering. I must have mixed it up. Maybe I had two. But instead of freaking out with me, they kind of backed off. You know that awkward laugh people do when they're scared and don't want to be? They kept saying, "You probably just grabbed a different one," or, "You're being paranoid, man." I knew they didn't believe what they were saying. Or maybe they did and just didn't want to consider the other option. That clover haunted me. I kept my wallet in a drawer after that because I didn't even like having it near me. A few days later, I took the clover out, put it on a ceramic plate, and burned it with a lighter. I watched it turn to ash. After that, it never showed up again. But the way I felt in those days, that stuck with me. Fast forward about 8 years. Life moved on. I moved out for a while, then ended up back in the same house. Mrs. Drummond was still there, still weirdly youthful, still sitting in the grass in summer. One afternoon, about 3 years ago, something strange happened. I was walking home, just minding my own business, when a woman stopped me on the sidewalk. She was wearing a long, dark coat and a niqab that covered most of her face, just her eyes visible. I'd never seen her before. And she said my name. Not, "Hey you," or "Excuse me." She said my name, clearly, like we knew each other. Then she started talking like she knew my whole life. Details I don't remember ever telling a stranger. Things about my family, about the house, about the street. I don't know why, but instead of asking, "Who are you?" I just played along. I nodded like I knew her. It was instinct, like my brain didn't want to break whatever was happening. Then she looked past me, right over my shoulder, across the road, straight at Mrs. Drummond's house. And she said, very quietly, "There is a devil living across from you. Be careful what you accept from her." That's it. That's all she said about it. No explanation, no backstory. She just told me to be careful, then blessed me under her breath and walked away. I never saw her again. For a while, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was confused. Maybe it was some strange prank. I don't know. I pushed it to the back of my mind. Life was normal again. Nothing strange happened. Until a few nights ago. So, my friend, let's call her Lena, lives a few doors down. She's one of those people who has her life together. Works as a nurse, runs marathons, doesn't drink or do drugs, super grounded, you know? Lena and my neighbor had always had this weird little connection. Like Mrs. Drummond seemed to like her more than most of us. For Lena's birthday, my neighbor gave her a pair of earrings. Small, old-fashioned things. Silver with little green stones that looked like tiny leaves. I remember Lena showing them to me and saying, "They're not really my style, but it's sweet of her," and laughing. She wore them that night. Everything seemed fine at first. We all went home. I went to bed. Around 4 in the morning, I woke up for no real reason and wandered to the window, just to look out. You know how sometimes you just feel like looking outside? Like something pulled you there? I saw Lena on the street. She was still in the clothes from the party, hair messy, those earrings glinting in the streetlights. She was going from door to door, knocking, talking to whoever opened. I couldn't hear what she was saying at first, so I opened my window. She was asking people to take her for a drive. People were confused. Some turned her away, some just closed the door. It wasn't angry, it was more like unsettled, because everybody here knows her as calm, polite, super composed. The next night, it got worse. I looked out again and could see her through her bedroom window. She kept climbing in and out of it, over and over, out onto the little ledge, back in, out, in, for almost an hour. No obvious reason, just this restless, frantic movement, like she couldn't settle in her own skin. At that point, I was really worried. I called her parents. They live about 30 minutes away, but they came as fast as they could. I stood at my window watching their car pull up, watching them. Zoe, let me just talk to you like we're sitting at a kitchen table together, okay? When I was a kid, I was really into anything supernatural. Ghosts, strange lights, stories about other worlds. Part of it was because I used to see things out of the corner of my eye all the time. Little shadowy figures, flickers of light, shapes that didn't quite make sense. So I grew up pretty open to the idea that there's more going on than what we usually see. When I was about 10, my dad, Mark, noticed how obsessed I was getting with this stuff. One evening, he called my younger brother, Leo, and me into the kitchen. I still remember the sound of the chairs scraping on the linoleum floor as we sat down. He looked really serious and said, "You have to promise me you won't tell anyone about this. Not yet." This was before people talked openly about aliens on podcasts and documentaries like they do now. Back then, it was way more likely that people would just call you crazy. He took a breath and said, "When I was 7, something happened to me. Back when I was growing up in a little town outside Winnipeg, he told us it was the middle of the night. He'd gotten up to use the bathroom. The hallway light was off, and only this faint glow from a street lamp outside was sneaking through the curtains. As he walked past the short staircase that led down from the bedrooms to the living room, maybe 4 or 5 steps, something caught his eye. He turned his head and froze. At the bottom of the stairs, he saw 3 short beings. He said they were a pale, translucent bluish green, almost like they were made of light and fog at the same time. Their heads were large, their eyes big and black, and their bodies were thin. The one in the middle wore something that looked like a kind of vest or harness, and for some reason that made my dad feel like that one was in charge. Now, this is the part that always gives me chills. He said he suddenly started hearing a voice, but not with his ears. He said the voice didn't sound male or female. It was just clear, pure. And he heard it right in the middle of his forehead, in that spot people sometimes call the third eye. It kept repeating, in perfect clarity, "We are not here to harm you. We are not here to harm you." Over and over. Calm. Firm. He told us it was the clearest he's ever heard anything in his life, before or since. What surprised him most is that he wasn't really scared. He said he actually felt excited, curious. He realized he could talk back to them the same way. So, without moving his lips, he asked in his mind, "Will I ever see you again?" And he said they replied, "We will let ourselves be known." Right after that, he said there was a flash of light, not blinding, just sudden, and the 3 beings seemed to fold into a single glowing cube, floating in the air at the bottom of the stairs. Then the cube shrank smaller and smaller, like a pixel disappearing, until it was gone. And just like that, the stairwell was empty again. As a 10-year-old hearing this, I was spellbound. Of course I believed my dad. He's one of the most level-headed, grounded people I know. I carried that story around like a secret treasure. When I was about 12, I made the mistake of sharing it at a friend's birthday party. I thought everyone would be amazed. Instead, one of the kids just laughed and said my dad was delusional. A couple of others joined in. I remember my face getting hot, and I laughed it off in the moment, but inside it hurt, a lot. Because they weren't talking about some random stranger. They were talking about my dad. My dad has two brothers, my uncles, Daniel and Chris. Years later, I asked them about it separately, and they both confirmed the same basic story with their own details. My uncle Daniel, the youngest, told me he woke up that night and saw a strange glow through the crack of their bedroom door. It was open just a little. He saw 3 small shapes in the hallway, and he could tell they weren't adults. He said he got so scared he pulled the blanket over his head and stayed like that, trembling, until he fell back asleep. My uncle Chris, the oldest, said he woke up too. He actually got out of bed and went to the doorway. He remembers standing there, watching the scene as my dad stood frozen near the top of the stairs, staring down at something. He said he knew it wasn't normal, but he couldn't make himself say anything. He just watched. The next morning, my dad told their mom, my grandmother Elena, what he'd seen. He was probably expecting her to tell him it was just a dream. Instead, she quietly said something that stunned him. She told him, "They were in my room too, at the foot of my bed." And then she added that it wasn't the first time she'd seen them. My dad and his brothers were apparently in such shock that morning that they just sat at the table, eating their cereal in silence. No teasing, no bickering. Just 3 boys staring at their bowls. My uncle Chris remembers looking out the window and telling my dad there was some kind of strange light or craft hovering above the neighbor's house. He described it like a bright, silent, glowing shape, just hanging there in the sky. But my dad said he didn't even go look. He was still too busy trying to make sense of what had happened in the hallway. I've checked this story with both uncles at different times, and the core of it always lines up. Same night, same house, same beings, different angles. My grandparents' house always felt different, even to me years later. There was a particular energy in that place. My grandmother used to say, "This is a blessed house," and she meant it. She was religious, and in her mind, whatever was visiting, the house was still protected, safe. A lot of strange things have happened in my family, to be honest. Odd experiences, dreams that came true, strange lights, that kind of thing. I've had my own share of weird moments that I can't neatly explain away. I'm at a point in my life now where I feel ready to start sharing more of these stories. Part of me hopes that by talking about them, someone else who's had something similar happen won't feel so alone or so crazy. You can call it whatever you want: aliens, spirits, hallucinations, visitors, or just an unsolved mystery. I know how it sounds, I really do. But I also know my family. I know my dad. I know my uncles. I know my grandmother. 4 people, all telling the same story from different angles, for decades. So when people say, "Your dad must be delusional," I think back to those quiet, serious faces around a breakfast table. 3 boys and their mother trying to process something they didn't have words for. And I think, there's more to this world than we understand. Anyway, that's one of the stories. Maybe I'll share more with you another time. So let me just talk to you like we're sitting at my kitchen table for a minute, all right? I'm a veteran. I got out of the military a few years back, and now I live up in northern Michigan, just outside this small lake town. It's not totally out in the sticks, but it's country enough. Long stretches of road, big pieces of land, a few farms, and neighbors you only really see when the snowblower breaks down. These days my life is pretty quiet. I've got kids, a wife, a mortgage, the usual. My idea of a wild Saturday night is grabbing an energy drink and a bag of chips, then staying up too late watching YouTube after everyone's asleep. That's honestly the highlight of my weekend sometimes. There's this 24-hour gas station convenience store about 5 minutes from my place, right off the highway. Because I'm always up late, I'd swing by there on weekend nights just to get out of the house a bit and feel like a person instead of just dad who does dishes. One night, I walk in there like usual, and I see this clerk behind the counter. And my brain just stutters, because he looks exactly like a guy I served with. I'll call my buddy Danny. Danny was also from Michigan. We'd gotten out of the service around the same time, and for a while we were pretty tight. We texted, called, played Xbox together sometimes. I even dated his cousin for a bit. He was that kind of friend, close enough that you don't think you'll ever completely lose touch. So I'm standing there in this fluorescent lighting, staring at this clerk, and it's like I'm looking at Danny's twin. Same jawline, same nose, same way he kind of squints when he smiles. I actually had to look away and then look back, like maybe my brain would correct itself. And then I noticed his arm. Danny had this tattoo on his left forearm. 4 thin black bands going all the way around, stacked on top of each other near the top of his forearm. He told me once, half joking, half serious, that it was some kind of old Japanese prison tattoo, like it meant something hardcore and mysterious. I never knew if that was true, but it sounded cool when we were younger. The clerk at the gas station had the exact same tattoo. Same arm, same place, same number of bands, same thickness. I remember just staring at his arm for a solid few seconds, because that was the part that broke my brain. You can look like someone, sure. People have doppelgangers. But the same tattoo, in the same spot? That's specific. Now, to be fair, something about him felt different. I could tell in my gut, this isn't Danny. The voice was off, the posture, the way he moved. But I was so thrown that I almost forgot why I was there. I just bought my stuff kind of on autopilot. He was really friendly too. Not just regular clerk friendly, but like extra. He commented on my sweater of all things. Said he liked my individuality, which is not something I get told often when I'm just wearing some old hoodie. He smiled a lot, made small talk. It was just enough to make the whole thing feel a tiny bit weirder. I drove home in this weird fog and, like I always do when something even mildly interesting happens, I told my wife about it. I tell her everything, because honestly my world is pretty small, and this was, like, the big headline of my week. Her name's Mia, by the way. So I'm telling her about this guy at the station who looks exactly like Danny and has the same tattoo. And she listens really carefully. She asks me a couple of questions like, "Are you sure it wasn't just him?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so. It didn't feel like him." We talk it through and decide that if it really were Danny, he probably would have recognized me and said something. We weren't strangers. We'd been through stuff together. You don't just forget a face like that. So then we try to rationalize it. Maybe the tattoo isn't as rare as Danny made it sound. Maybe it's not some unique prison thing. Maybe it's just a flash piece they got from a book at a shop somewhere. Maybe a lot of guys think the same bands look cool and get them without knowing the story behind them. Mia leans toward that explanation. She's like, he was probably just talking big to impress people. I kind of let it go. At least, I told myself I did. But I kept seeing the clerk. I'd go in on another Saturday night, and there he was, working the late shift. Then the next weekend. At some point, I realized I'd seen him enough times that it would now be awkward to ask, "Hey, do you know a guy named Danny?" Like, I'd missed my window for it to be casual. Still, he always felt just slightly off. Not creepy, just off. Familiar in a way that made my brain itch. Eventually, I couldn't shake it. So one night I decided, all right, let me just look Danny up, see what he's been up to. Maybe he actually moved up here. Maybe this is all a big coincidence, and also not a coincidence. I looked him up online. And that's when I found out that Danny had died. Not years ago, not some distant tragedy. He'd passed away about a month before I went searching for him. I just sat there staring at the screen. You know that feeling where your stomach drops out? That slow, hollow feeling? I had that. Danny was a good friend. He wasn't perfect, none of us were, but he was a solid guy. And I didn't even know he was gone. I didn't call. I didn't go to the funeral. I was just living my boring little life while his ended. I found his obituary page and left a message there, some clumsy attempt at a goodbye. Then I just sat in my chair and cried, quietly. My house was asleep, and I was mourning someone in the glow of a laptop screen. After that, it felt wrong not to tell the clerk. Even if it turned out he didn't know Danny at all, I kept thinking, what if he does? What if they're cousins or old friends or something, and I've been walking in here every weekend standing across from a guy who deserves to know? So I decided, next Saturday, I'm going to bring it up. I'll ask him if he knows Danny. If he doesn't, okay, I'll walk away feeling a little stupid, but at least I tried. If he does, maybe I can tell him what I knew about Danny, and we can share a moment or something. Saturday rolls around. I drive out to the station. It's late, like usual. He's not there. No big deal. People get days off, shifts change. I figure I'll just catch him another night. On my way back home, it's about 2 a.m. The roads are mostly empty. It's that weird, quiet time of night when everything feels a little bit unreal. I'm driving down my road, thinking about Danny, replaying old memories, and that whole thing with the clerk. Then my headlights catch someone up ahead. There's a man standing near my house. Not at my mailbox, not in a driveway, just there, on the side of the road, wearing a long coat that hangs down almost to his knees. Not quite a classic trench coat, but that's what my brain calls it. He's facing the road, facing me. My headlights hit him full on, and I can see just enough to know he's not one of my neighbors. At least, not anyone I recognize. His hands are down at his sides. No phone in his hand. No dog on a leash. No car pulled over nearby with the hazards on. Just a man, at 2 a.m., standing in the dark outside my neighborhood. I slow down. I don't know why, but I do. Part of me is thinking, is he okay? Does he need help? Another part of me is thinking, this is how people get murdered in movies. I ease past him, trying to get a better look without being too obvious. He doesn't move. Not a wave, not a step, nothing. Just watches my car go by. When I finally pass him, I get this surge of anger mixed with fear. I'm a grown man, a veteran, a dad. I've dealt with worse than some guy standing on the side of the road. So I think, screw this, and I stomp on the brakes. The car lurches to a stop. I look up at the rearview mirror, expecting to see him lit red by my brake lights so I can throw it in reverse and ask him what the hell he's doing out here. But there's nothing in the mirror. Just the empty road behind me, glowing in red. Now, distance-wise, I should have still been close enough to see him. I wasn't flying by. I'd slowed down as I approached him. There's no ditch deep enough for him to vanish into. No big trees right there to duck behind. No driveway he could have sprinted into without me noticing. And I'm just sitting there with my foot on the brake, feeling this cold, prickly sensation crawl up my back. I actually thought about backing up and looking more carefully, but then I had this other thought. What if I'm overreacting? What if it's just some teenager waiting on a ride? I don't want to be that weird old guy who jumps out of his car and starts interrogating kids at 2 a.m. So I talked myself down, took my foot off the brake, and drove home. When I got inside, I told Mia everything. Every detail. The missing clerk, Danny's obituary, the guy standing on the road. This time, she didn't try to rationalize as much. She just got quiet. I could see in her face that something about it bothered her on a deeper level. She didn't say, "That's nothing." She just worried. I told her I was thinking of driving down to visit Danny's grave. It felt like something I needed to do. Say a proper goodbye. Pay my respects. Every time I picked a day and told her, though, something would come up. She'd make plans, or forget I'd mentioned it and schedule something else, or suddenly really need my help with something at that exact time. At first, I thought it was just bad timing, but after the second or third time, I started to suspect that, deep down, she didn't want me to go. Like she had that same bad feeling she used to get about houses when she was a kid, and didn't even realize she was acting on it. After that night with the man in the coat, I never saw the clerk again. Not once. And listen, I don't have a big life. I don't drive to the next town over just to see what's there. I go to work, I come home. I run errands in the same little circle. That gas station is part of my routine. If he'd kept working there, I would have seen him again. Guaranteed. But he was just gone. New faces behind the counter. Different people on the late shift. Same store, same smell, same ding of the door. Just no sign of him. No explanation. No, "Hey, did you hear what happened to that one guy?" Nothing. So that's it. That's the whole thing. I don't have a neat ending for you. No big revelation. No jump scare. All I can tell you is, it happened. I talk about it with Mia every now and then, and it still gives me that same hollow feeling in my chest. Same little shiver down the back of my neck. My life is pretty boring, honestly. But this is the one story I can look you in the eye and swear is absolutely real. So, I want to tell you about something that's been hanging around my fiancé for years. I'm not totally sure what I believe about ghosts and all that, but whatever this is, it seems to follow him, not the place. And honestly, that's what freaks me out the most. Back when Liam still lived with his parents, weird stuff would happen all the time in their house. But when he finally moved out on his own, everything just stopped. For a couple of years, nothing. No strange noises, no weird dreams, no little coincidences. Then we moved in together, and it all started again. The first story he ever told me about it was from when he was a teenager. One night, he had this awful nightmare. He woke up all shaky, and when his eyes adjusted, he saw a woman standing in his bedroom doorway. He said she looked completely out of place, like she was from another time. She was wearing this pale blue summer dress, almost like something you'd wear to a picnic. The fabric hung just below her knees, and her hair was long and dark, but he couldn't make out her face clearly. She was just watching him. He pulled the blanket over his head like a little kid and eventually forced himself back to sleep. The next morning, he's in the kitchen with his dad, Mark, and Mark goes, super casually, "Hey, I had a weird dream last night. I dreamt there was this woman standing over you while you were sleeping. She was in one of those light blue dresses, like from the 70s or something." Same dress, same woman, and Liam hadn't told him a thing yet. That was the first time he really thought, okay, something is definitely off here. Another time, when he was still living there, he and his dad were downstairs in the basement, just hanging out. They weren't doing anything creepy, just playing pool and listening to music. In the corner of the room, his little nephew had left one of those toy police cars, the plastic kind that lights up and plays siren sounds when you press a button. It had been sitting there for hours, not touched, not moved. In the middle of their game, the thing suddenly lights up, siren blaring, and slowly rolls forward from where it was parked against the wall. It didn't just wobble a little and fall over. It actually rolled across the floor toward them. No one else was home. No windows open. No fan blowing. They both just froze and watched it until it stopped near the foot of the stairs. Mark walked over, picked it up, and just went, "Huh, guess the batteries kicked back in," and put it back. But Liam said he could tell his dad didn't really believe that. Fast forward a few years. Liam and I finally get our own place, a small 2-story townhouse. We're excited, we're broke, and we're trying to make it feel like home. For a little while, everything is normal. Then we get our first dog, a goofy little mutt named Benny. About a week after we bring Benny home, Liam has to leave on a short work trip, so it's just me and the dog at the house. One night, I'm sitting on the couch scrolling on my phone, trying to unwind. It's pretty quiet. Then Benny lifts his head, ears perked, and just stares toward the hallway that leads to the stairs. At first, I think he's just hearing the neighbors, but then he stands up, starts growling, real low at first, and walks over to the bottom of the stairs. Our upstairs linen closet is right at the top of those stairs, and he's locked in on it like a laser. He starts barking, full on, non-stop, at that closet. I'm alone. It's past midnight, and he will not stop. Eventually, I'm so freaked out, I grab a heavy blanket, roll it up, and shove it tight along the bottom of the closet door so it feels sealed, I guess. Only then does he finally calm down enough to come back to the bedroom with me. But the whole night he sleeps with his back pressed against my leg, facing the door. And that was just the start. Around that same time, I started working third shift at a small nursing home, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shifts. That meant Liam was alone at night a lot, and he's the one who started noticing the really dramatic stuff. Our townhouse is pretty open. When you walk in, the living room and kitchen kind of share the same space, with just a counter dividing them. The fridge sits right at the edge of the kitchen, close to the counter. One night, Liam's home alone, sitting at his desk that faces the living room, gaming with his headphones on. Out of nowhere, he hears this loud thud, thud, thud behind him. He turns around just in time to see 2 boxes of cereal and a bag of rice that had been sitting on top of the fridge flying off, literally moving through the air and landing near the oven, a good 4 or 5 feet away from where they were. Not sliding, not tipping over, thrown. He told me he paused his game, just stared at everything on the floor, and said out loud, "Okay, that was not cool." About an hour later, he's still on edge but trying to pretend it's nothing. The laundry area is in this little nook off the kitchen. We keep a plastic laundry basket on top of the dryer because there's not much space. He hears another loud bang, goes to check. The laundry basket is on the floor, about a foot in front of the dryer. No one's touched it. The dryer wasn't running. There's no reason it should have bounced or fallen that far. He said that was the moment he stopped trying to talk himself out of it. A few nights after that, something happened that really got to him. We usually sleep with some kind of light on. Sometimes it's a little lamp, sometimes it's the closet light. That night, we left the closet light on and forgot to close the closet door before going to bed. Sometime in the middle of the night, he wakes up. You know that hazy, half-awake state where you're just trying to figure out what time it is? He rolls over, grabs his phone, and as he's doing that, he catches movement out of the corner of his eye. He says in the thin strip of light from the closet, he sees a figure, tall, still, standing in the corner of the closet, just inside the doorway. It looked like someone was leaning slightly forward, peering out at him, like they were deciding whether to step into the room. He couldn't see a clear face, just the outline of a woman, that same kind of old-fashioned dress shape, almost brushing her knees. He blinked, and she was gone. He didn't wake me up. He just lay there, staring at the closet until the sun came up. The next morning, he told me, and as he's describing her, how the dress hung, the way she stood there watching, I realized she sounded exactly like the woman he'd seen in his parents' house all those years ago. The same presence that his dad had dreamed about over him. That's when it really hit me. This isn't just a creepy house thing. At this point, I honestly don't know if it's the places that trigger it, or if something is attached to him specifically, or if it's some weird, shared imagination thing. I don't have a neat explanation, and trust me, I've tried to find one. All I know is, wherever Liam goes, the strange stuff seems to find him. And sometimes, late at night, when Benny suddenly lifts his head and stares at the hallway for no reason at all, I catch myself wondering if she's standing there, watching. So, I guess I should start by saying that my partner, Noah, seems to have this little storm cloud of weirdness that follows him everywhere. We've been together for 3 years now, living together for about 2.5, and honestly, the strange stuff was happening long before I came into the picture. It just didn't stop when I did. Back when Noah still lived with his parents, they had a lot of odd things happen in that house. But the moment he moved out for college, everything went quiet. No noises, no shadows, nothing. Then we got our place together, and it was like someone flipped the on switch again. The first story he ever told me was from those early days at his parents' place. One night, he had this really vivid nightmare and jolted awake. When he opened his eyes, there was a woman standing in his bedroom doorway. He said she looked solid, not like a shadow or anything. She was wearing this pale yellow sundress, the kind you'd wear in late spring, and her hair was long and dark, hanging forward a bit so he couldn't see her face clearly. He just lay there, frozen, staring at her. Then he blinked, and she was gone. He figured it was sleep paralysis or his brain playing tricks on him. The next morning, he went downstairs, and his dad, Mark, looked exhausted. Over coffee, Mark told him he'd had a weird dream that same night. In his dream, there was a woman standing over Noah while he slept, leaning over him like she was checking if he was breathing. Mark described her dress, her hair, even the way she stood, and it was exactly the same as what Noah had seen. Noah hadn't told him a thing yet. Another time, when he still lived there, Noah and his dad were downstairs in the den throwing darts and talking. The TV was off, no music, just them joking around. In the corner of the room, there was one of those little kids' light-up toy trucks Noah's nephew had left behind. It had been sitting there all evening, totally still. In the middle of their conversation, the truck suddenly lit up, made that little revving noise, and rolled itself across the floor toward them. No one had touched it. No air vent was blowing on it. The windows were closed. It just went. Mark apparently just said, "Nope," picked it up, and took the batteries out right then and there. After Noah moved out on his own for a while, all of that stopped. No strange dreams, no toys moving, nothing worth mentioning. It was quiet for a couple of years. Then we signed the lease on our townhouse, and the quiet ended. About a week after we brought home our first dog, a goofy little mutt named Riley, Noah had to leave on a short work trip. So it was just me and Riley in the house one night. I was lying on the couch, half watching some crime show, when Riley suddenly hopped up, fur on his back standing straight up, and started growling. Not just a little woof, this low, steady growl that I'd never heard from him before. He was staring up the stairs. I muted the TV and listened, thinking maybe someone was in the hallway or outside. Nothing. Riley slowly walked to the bottom of the stairs, still growling, and then started barking like crazy at the hallway closet at the top. I followed him up, heart pounding, but trying to be rational. I opened the closet, checked the shelves, pushed the coats aside. Nothing. Just our jackets and a box of Christmas decorations. I told him, "See, there's nothing there," and closed the door. Things escalated that same week. At the time, I had just started working overnight shifts at an assisted living facility. That meant Noah was home alone most nights, and he'd usually stay up late gaming in the living room. Our place is pretty open, kitchen and living room all in one space with just a counter between them. The fridge is to the right, kind of near that dividing counter. One night, Noah said he was in the middle of a game when he heard this rustling sound behind him, like plastic crinkling. He thought Riley was into something, so he turned around and saw 3 bags of chips fly, literally fly, off the top of the fridge. Not just slide off. He swears they went out and forward, like someone had grabbed them and tossed them toward the stove. They landed a good 5 or 6 feet away, near the oven. He checked Riley first, thinking maybe the dog had bumped the fridge, but Riley was asleep on the other side of the room. No one else was home. No one was near the kitchen. About an hour later, he heard another thump from the laundry nook. We keep a plastic laundry basket on top of the dryer, and he said he watched, from his desk, as the basket slid to the edge and then popped off like it had been pushed. It landed on the floor about a foot in front of the dryer. At that point, he paused his game, walked through the townhouse, and turned on basically every light. A few nights after that, something happened that really stuck with him. We usually keep a light on when we sleep, sometimes a small lamp, sometimes the closet light, just so the room isn't pitch black. That night, we accidentally left the walk-in closet door partly open with the closet light on. I slept straight through the night, but Noah didn't. He told me he woke up around 3 in the morning. You know that heavy, groggy feeling when you're half awake? He rolled over to check his phone on the nightstand. As he turned, from the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing in the closet. The door was open just enough that he could see into the corner, and he said it looked like a person pressed into the shadows, their head slightly tilted, just watching. Not moving, not coming closer, just there. He said he froze for a second, and in that split second, it was so real that he started to say my name, thinking maybe I was up looking for something. Then he realized I was right next to him in bed, breathing deeply, fast asleep. He blinked, turned his head fully toward the closet, and whatever he'd seen was gone. Just our clothes and a pile of shoes. He didn't wake me up that night, but he told me in the morning, and I could see how shaken he was. Noah's not the type to jump at every little thing. If anything, he's annoyingly logical about stuff. But that really got to him. Since then, it's like there's this pattern. The really strange things, the ones I can't explain away with drafts or old wiring or a creaky building, they always seem to happen around him. When he's alone in the house, when he's the one waking up at night, when he's the one people dream about. I don't know if it's the house. We've moved once since then, and little things still happen. I don't know if it's something attached to him, or something that just notices him more. All I know is that, wherever Noah goes, the weirdness eventually finds its way back. And somehow, I've just kind of accepted that it's part of loving him. The dog growling at empty corners, the random objects that refuse to stay put, the way he sometimes wakes up and stares into the dark, like he's trying to convince himself he didn't see what he just saw. So, a few nights ago, I had this dream that felt so real, it kind of stayed with me all day after. I want to tell you about it because it felt less like a random dream and more like a visit. In the dream, I'm at this strange place that's half school camp, half mountain lodge. Think a big wooden chalet, but with neon signs and an old sound system. Like someone tried to turn a cozy winter cabin into a club and then just stopped updating it 15 years ago. There's a bar, wooden beams, old posters on the walls, and that soft golden light you get in late afternoon. Outside the windows, I can see trees and a bit of sky, like we're somewhere slightly remote. Inside, though, it's full of people from my high school years, classmates, faces I haven't seen in ages, and my old friend group. They all look about 17, 18, but I'm my current age. Everyone is laughing, dancing, talking over the music. You know that feeling when a room just hums with social energy? It's like that. Except, not for me. No matter where I walked, people drifted away. Someone would make eye contact for a second, and then suddenly turn and join another conversation. Groups would tighten up the moment I came near, like there wasn't space for me to step in. I wasn't invisible exactly. They saw me. But it was like I didn't belong in their world anymore. I remember trying to figure out why I was even there. You know that feeling of being both inside something and outside it at the same time? I kept walking around the lodge, looking for an exit. But every door just led to another hallway, another room, another part of the same place. I couldn't leave. At some point, I spotted one of my closest friends from back then. Let's call him Marco. In real life, Marco was such a kind, goofy person, and in the dream, he looked like his teenage self again. Hoodie, messy hair, the whole thing. I felt this wave of relief, like, finally, someone I know, someone safe. He headed toward the bar, so I followed him. I caught up and said something like, "Hey, aren't you going to wait for me so we can sit together?" The kind of thing you say when you're half joking, half hoping. He didn't seem angry or cold. He just smiled and shrugged, like it was no big deal, and said, "You know, they're waiting for me to drink and dance," and then drifted away into the crowd. The weird thing is, as soon as he left, the bar area felt almost abandoned. The music sounded faint, like it was coming from another room. The bar counter looked dusty, like it hadn't really been used in years. Bottles were still there, but the labels were faded. I remember seeing dust suspended in the light from the windows, moving slowly, like time itself had slowed down. The whole place felt nostalgic, but not in a sweet way. More like walking through an old memory you're not sure you're supposed to be in anymore. Eventually, the crowd thinned out. The music quieted. People kind of faded away until the lodge was almost empty. That's when I noticed him. There was a man standing near the end of the bar, someone who clearly worked there. A waiter or bartender, maybe both. I realized he'd been around the whole time, but I hadn't really seen him until that moment. He was dressed very simply. Dark jeans, a plain shirt, and he was holding a well-worn leather jacket over his arm, like he was about to clock out and leave. He didn't look old, but not young either. One of those people whose age is hard to pin down. His presence felt grounded. "Calm," she said through these shaky, happy tears. "It happened. It finally happened." And he smiled at her, this warm, reassuring smile, and replied, "See? I told you it would come right when it was meant to." His tone was light, almost playful, but there was something very certain in it, like he really knew what he was talking about. Clara let out this sort of breathy laugh, like a weight dropped off her shoulders, and said, "Yeah, it's over now." I had no idea what they were talking about. It felt like I'd stumbled into the end of someone else's story, one that had nothing to do with me. But at the same time, something about their conversation tugged at me. I felt this weird mix of sadness and hope in my chest. When Clara walked away, I went up to him. I didn't even know what I wanted to ask. The words just came out of my mouth before I decided to say them. I said, "What about me? For me, is it over too?" And I remember, even in the dream, thinking, what am I talking about? What it? But emotionally, it made perfect sense. It was like my soul knew what I meant, even if my mind didn't. He looked at me with this almost mischievous, knowing expression, like he'd been expecting that question. His eyes were kind, but sharp in that way that makes you feel very seen. Then he smiled and said, in this calm, slightly teasing tone, "For you, it's just beginning." Behind him, Clara, who had stopped a few steps away, turned back and chimed in, "See? I told you." Like she somehow already knew this about me too. His energy was hard to describe. He wasn't flirty or dramatic. He felt like someone who has watched your whole life unfold from a distance and still likes you, still believes in you. There was something almost messenger-like about him. Not quite human, not in a scary way, but in that way where you feel like you're talking to someone who understands more than they're saying. I asked him, "Are you leaving?" He nodded a little and said, very matter-of-factly, "Yeah, I'm leaving on Friday." I don't know why, but that specific detail stuck with me. Friday. It felt important somehow. Then I asked, "Will I see you again?" He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully, and then with a little grin, he said, "A lot of people say they meet me once in their life, and once on a screen." I frowned and repeated, "On a screen?" He smiled wider and said it again, almost like a line from a movie he'd delivered 1,000 times. Once in their life, and once in a movie. He said it twice, the same way both times, like the repetition itself was part of the message. I had this strong feeling that I should recognize him, like when you see an actor playing a new role, but you can't remember which film you saw them in. That sense of, I know you from somewhere. I kept trying to place him, but nothing came. After that, we just looked at each other for a second, and then we hugged. And it wasn't awkward or formal. It was the kind of hug you give someone you've known forever, someone you trust completely. There was so much comfort in it. I felt safe and seen and oddly encouraged. I think he said something to me after that, something gentle that nudged me toward waking up. I don't remember the exact words, only the feeling. "It's okay to go now. You can wake up." And then I woke up. When I opened my eyes, I had this really strong sensation that I had just met someone important. Not just a random dream character, but someone I was supposed to meet. I kept thinking, I should know who he is. I should understand what he was trying to tell me. Even now, I can't fully explain it, but that sentence keeps echoing in my mind. So, this all started in my dorm. I live in this really old residence hall on campus, like it's been around almost a century. My room's actually pretty big for a dorm, and when you first walk in, there's this little entry area with a table where I usually dump my keys and mail. One night, I was standing there by the table talking to my boyfriend. Well, my boyfriend at the time, I'll call him Eli. And after we finished talking, he walked toward my bed on the other side of the room. I turned back to the table to organize some stuff, and a few seconds later, I felt this pressure on my backside, like someone put their hand there. He does that sometimes when he's being playful, and I could feel that sort of "someone's right behind me" presence. So I just assumed it was him, and I even smiled a little, like, okay, very funny. But when I turned around, Eli was way across the room, sitting on the edge of my bed, looking down at his phone. There was nobody behind me. We both kind of froze. I told him what I felt, and he got this weird look on his face, but we ended up brushing it off, like, okay, the dorm is old, maybe I imagined it, that kind of thing. The next day, though, we got into an argument. Nothing huge, but enough that he left the room to cool off. There's this side staircase a little ways down the hall that nobody really uses, and he went to sit there by himself. Later, when we were talking about it, he told me that while he was on the stairs, he heard footsteps coming down toward him. Slow, like someone was taking careful steps. He thought it was me coming to talk to him, so he didn't even look up at first. Then he said he felt a presence beside him. He saw a shadow on the wall that looked like my silhouette, my height, my hair, just kind of there with him. And then he felt a hand on his back, the way I do when I'm trying to comfort him. He said it felt exactly like me. He was still upset and waiting for me to say something, but I didn't. So he turned around to look at me, and there was no one there. The stairs were completely empty. When he looked back at the wall, even the shadow was gone. After that, he went outside to this small courtyard near the building to calm down. It was really late and pretty quiet, just a light breeze. While he was out there, he noticed one tree in the corner moving way more violently than the others, like something big was pushing through the branches. He said it didn't match how the wind felt at all. Everything else was barely moving, but that one spot was shaking. From there, things kind of followed him. He doesn't live with me, so most of what's been happening since then has been at his house. One night, he was taking a shower. Everyone else was asleep, and the bathroom door has one of those older locks, but the key for it had been missing for a while. He said he suddenly noticed the lock turning very slightly, like someone was trying to twist it from the outside, just enough to move, not enough to click. When he stared at it, he saw something dark, like a little shadow, scurry under the gap at the bottom of the door. It was quick, like it darted away. The next day, something similar happened to his cousin when they were using the same bathroom. They didn't even know about his shower story at that point. I was in there, just minding my business, when I heard a knock on the door. It was Eli. He sounded a little shaken and asked, "Hey, can I come in?" I said yeah, and he opened the door and looked really confused. He asked me, "Did you just call me?" I told him no, I hadn't said anything. I hadn't even spoken since I left the kitchen. He swore he heard me calling his name from down the hall, loud and clear, in this specific teasing voice I use sometimes. He said it was exactly how I sound, and it used the nickname that only I call him. That's what freaked him out the most. It wasn't just my normal voice. It was a tone I only use with him. He asked me if I could try to copy it, to see if maybe he'd just imagined it. I tried a few times, but he kept shaking his head and saying, "No, that's not it. It was sharper, closer, more like you were right next to me." And that's just one example. These kinds of things have been happening to him almost daily now. He'll be in his room, or the kitchen, or the bathroom, and he'll feel like something is there with him. He says the feeling gets especially strong when he's sad or stressed. There was one time he told me that he was lying in bed feeling really low, and he suddenly felt this gentle pressure on his shoulder, like someone was trying to comfort him. He said, "It felt like you. I almost said your name out loud, but you weren't there." He'll text me sometimes saying, "It's here again," or "It feels like you're in the room, but I know you're not." There's also this smell in his bedroom that we can't figure out. It's only in his room, nowhere else in the house. It's this weird, rotting kind of smell, like something wet that's been left too long, or old food hidden somewhere. But we've cleaned everything, moved furniture, checked the closet, the vents, under the bed, everything. It just lingers. It comes and goes, but when it's there, it's really strong. So that's what's been going on. To sum it up, it started in my old dorm with something touching me when no one was there. Then something that looked and felt like me went to comfort him on the stairway. He keeps seeing and hearing things at his house, locks moving, shadows under doors, something calling his name in my voice. He feels a presence most when he's sad, and sometimes it tries to comfort him in ways that feel like me. His room has this strange, rotting smell we can't trace. I don't know if it's something attached to him, or to both of us, or if it somehow followed us from the dorm, but it feels personal, like it's trying to copy me or use me to get close to him. I'm honestly worried about him. I care about him a lot, and it's getting harder and harder to just brush this off as nothing. So, that's our story. I don't really know what we're dealing with, or why it seems so focused on him, and on me, in a way. But if you're listening to this, and you know anything about this kind of thing, or you've experienced something similar, we'd really love any insight or guidance you can give us. So before I dive in, let me give you a little context. I grew up in a tiny town down in southern Mississippi, not too far from the Gulf. A lot has happened in my family. I lost my older brother Eli about 5 years ago, and that shattered all of us in ways I still don't fully understand. After that, things at home really started to crack. My parents, Lena and Mark, had already been rocky, but from the time I was around 11 until right before my mom and I left, it felt like their marriage was just one long argument. I won't get into all the details of the yelling and the late-night fights, but my dad, he wasn't loyal, he wasn't honest, and he wasn't really a father in any way that mattered. I'm 19 now, and thankfully my mom and I don't live in that house anymore. It never felt like a home. Not emotionally, and honestly not spiritually either, once you hear the rest of this. So, the closet. Upstairs there was this little hallway that opened into my bedroom, and off to the side was my closet. Directly under that closet was my parents' bedroom. That detail matters. From the very first night I moved from my downstairs room to that upstairs one, I hated that closet. Like a deep, irrational kind of hate. I didn't like going in there. I'd get this tight feeling in my chest, like I was walking into someone else's space and they did not want me there. I was weird about the door, too. If I was in my room and the closet door was cracked open even an inch, it drove me crazy. I'd get up, walk over, swing it all the way open like I was catching something in the act, stare into the dark for a second, and then slam it shut. Every time. But if I was actually inside the closet, I didn't want the door closed behind me either. Both options, door open or door closed, felt wrong, just in different ways. Because of that, I kind of stopped using it like a normal person. I'd let clean clothes pile up in a basket and just pull outfits out of there for weeks, sometimes months. Not exactly a life tip, but I was genuinely scared of that space. And then there was the smell. My mom and I tried so many times to describe it, and the best we ever came up with was, imagine an unwashed, sweaty guy's armpit mixed with an old sneaker that's been tumbled dry too long. Damp, sour, hot, and stale all at once. It would come and go, but when it was bad, it was bad. When I was younger, our neighbor's grandson, Jonah, told me this story that our house was on top of an old Native American burial ground. He said Choctaw specifically. Kid stuff, right? I brushed it off, but it stuck in the back of my mind. Sometimes we'd go wandering out in the woods behind the house, and way back, deeper in the wet, marshy part, there were these almost perfectly round little hills. Not like the gentle slope our house sat on. These were distinct, like someone had mounded the earth on purpose. I remember looking at them and thinking about Jonah's story, and getting this little shiver, even while telling myself it was nothing. Anyway, my first really strange experience happened when I was around 9 or 10. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, lying flat on my back, which I never do, and staring straight toward the foot of my bed. And I knew something was wrong before I even focused my eyes. I couldn't move, couldn't talk. I was fully awake, but my body felt like it was nailed to the mattress. At the foot of my bed, I could see the outline of something. It was darker than the darkness in the room, if that makes sense. Like someone had cut a person-shaped hole out of the night and pasted it there. I just stared at it. I don't know how long. Maybe it was only a minute, but it felt stretched out and sticky, like time didn't move right. I don't remember how it ended. I don't remember screaming or it leaving. It's like 1 second it was there, and then the memory just cuts. Either I passed out or it vanished, and my brain didn't keep the part in between. I can still see that shape in my mind though, as clear as if it were yesterday. A few nights later, something similar happened. I woke up already sitting up in bed, which is strange in itself, and I was staring straight out my open bedroom door into the hallway. It was like I had woken up mid-moment, already looking, already waiting for something. From my bed, the wall with the windows, the outside wall, was on the right. and on the left was the wall that boxed in the stairwell. I was just staring into that strip of hallway when I saw movement. That same sort of figure, or at least I believe it was the same presence, lurched across the hallway. Not walked, lurched, from the outside wall to the stairwell wall, like it was dragging two long limbs behind it, or moving in a way a person isn't built to move. Again, I don't remember what happened after. No screaming, no jumping out of bed. Just a blank after that moment, like my brain refused to process the rest. Years later, when I was maybe 16, my friend Marina came over. I'd told her bits and pieces about the closet and the smell and the weird way the house felt sometimes. She's really into spiritual stuff and energy and all that, so she brought sage and some herbs and went room to room, especially focusing on that closet. For a while after she smudged the place, things actually felt lighter. The smell in the closet disappeared for a couple of months. I could step inside without my stomach dropping, and I remember thinking, okay, maybe we fixed it. Maybe it's all in my head. But it didn't stay that way. Fast forward to this past summer, late May into August. It was brutally hot in Mississippi. I had one of those little window AC units in my room, and I kept it blasting pretty much non-stop between 66 degrees Fahrenheit and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. My room was like a little freezer, which I loved. My mom had started regularly salting the closet doorway by then. She'd read about salt being protective, absorbing negative energy and all that. And honestly, the smell had come back stronger than ever. You'd open the closet door, and it felt like the stink hit you before the air did. So she'd sprinkle a neat line of salt across the threshold. At first, it made her feel better, like she was doing something. But then the door itself started acting strange. Now, I'll admit, the doors in that house were cheap, thin, hollow core, installed fast when my parents built the place. The house is literally the same age as me. But even for cheap doors, this was weird. The closet door began to swell. It got harder and harder to close, like it was pushing back. You'd have to lean your weight into it to get the latch to catch, and sometimes it would stick, like the frame had twisted. But nothing else upstairs was doing that. The AC was right there in the bedroom, pushing out cold air, so it's not like that one door was exposed to some crazy humidity the rest of the house missed. My mom even cut a little vent into the bottom of the door, thinking maybe it was a circulation thing. It helped for, like, a second. Then the swelling got worse again. And then came the part that really freaked both of us out. One afternoon, not even a week after she'd last salted the doorway, literally just a few days, my mom went upstairs to grab something out of my closet. I was downstairs at the time. I remember hearing her step up onto the landing, and then this sharp, surprised noise from her. Not quite a scream, but close. The salt was gone. Not scattered, not crusted, gone. In its place, right where that line had been, was this shallow, cold puddle of water. Or not just water, it had this faint, weird slickness to it, like it had soaked up something else. When she told me, she said, "It felt wrong, like stepping in a spill that was clean and dirty at the same time. It hadn't rained. Nothing in the closet leaked. There weren't any pipes running under that doorway, and the AC condensation didn't drip there. There was no reason for water to be there, and definitely no reason for all that salt to dissolve so completely in just a couple of days." She checked the baseboards, the ceiling, everything she could think of. Dry. Totally dry. Just that one puddle right where the salt had been. We cleaned it up, of course. Toweled it, wiped it, checked it again. And both of us just kind of avoided talking about what we were really thinking. Because logically, sure, you can try to blame humidity or some weird little leak. You can come up with a dozen explanations if you really want to sleep at night. But I grew up in that house. I know how it felt when things got heavy, how the air would change, how the smell in that closet seemed to have a mind of its own. I know what I saw at the foot of my bed and in that hallway, even if I can't prove it to anyone. And when I picture my mom stepping into that salty puddle, right on the threshold of the one place in the house that always felt wrong, I can't shake the feeling that something in that closet didn't like the boundary she was trying to put down. We don't live there anymore. We left, and I don't miss that house for a second. But sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night in our new place, I'll glance at my own perfectly normal closet door, closed and quiet, and I'll think about that old one, swelling, breathing, and I wonder if whatever was there upstairs, above my parents' room, is still pacing back and forth in the dark, waiting for the next person to move in and crack that door open. So, let me tell you about this house I used to live in. Back in 2018, my family and I moved into this little place in the downtown area of a small city in southern Saskatchewan, like 20 minutes from the US border. The house itself wasn't anything special, kind of old, kind of cramped, but the location was weird. To the right of us was a duplex and a small parking lot. To the left, another parking lot and this tiny stone house. That stone house was famous in town. It was the first house ever built there. People always talked about it like it was a landmark. It's still standing, all worn down and stubborn. For some reason, in my head, everything spooky that happened in our place sort of pointed back to that stone house. It was literally about 30 steps away, separated from us by a parking lot and this white picket fence. I don't know why, but it just felt like whatever was going on started over there and bled into our place. Anyway, let me walk you through what happened. The bells on the door. The first thing I remember was late 2018, before COVID was even a whisper. It was nighttime. I was at home with my mom and my dad. Mom was on the couch watching some drama show, and Dad was in the kitchen doing dishes and humming to himself. We had these little bells hanging on the front doorknob. We'd bought them to train our dog Milo so he could ring them when he needed to go outside. That training lasted like one day. After that, the bells just became our unofficial, someone just came in alert. So I'm sitting there in the living room, scrolling on my phone when I hear the bells. Clear as day. Jingle, jingle. I immediately think, oh, that's my older sister Maya, because she was the only one who wasn't home yet. I got excited, because we always debriefed our day in our room. So I got up, walked straight to our bedroom, and it was empty. I remember just standing there like, okay, weird. I knew I'd heard the bells. So I went to the entrance, thinking maybe she was still taking her shoes off or something. But no. The front door was closed, locked. What was open was the basement door. It was slightly ajar, just slowly moving like someone had pushed it and let it go. There was no draft, no window open, nothing like that. Just this door, gently shifting back and forth like it had just been touched. I got this cold feeling in my stomach. You know when your body realizes something before your brain does? I went back to the living room and asked my mom, "Hey, is Maya home?" She looked at me and said, "No, why? I thought that was you. I heard the bells." So now we both know we heard it. Maya didn't get home for another hour. Footsteps and laughter. Fast forward to 2020. My sister-in-law Lena had just moved in with us after having my nephew Eli. At that point, it was just me, Lena, and Eli at home. Everyone else was out. I was in my room, lying on my bed, half on my phone, half spacing out, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. My older sister Maya has this very specific way of walking. She kind of drags her feet a little. It sounds lazy and familiar in a way that's weirdly comforting. That's exactly what I heard, that dragging walk. Then I heard soft baby giggles. Eli's laughter. It's pretty distinct. He had this bubbly little giggle that kind of came in bursts. So I'm like, oh, Maya's home. Cool. I figured she was in the living room playing with him. I waited for her to come into my room and bug me, because she usually did, but she never came. After maybe half an hour, I got up to see what they were doing. I stepped out into the hallway, and it was quiet. No Maya, just the TV on low in the living room. Then she turned to me and said, very carefully, "Did you hear that too?" I got chills immediately, but I played dumb. I was like, "Hear what?" She said, "Maya's footsteps. I thought she came home, and I thought Eli was awake. I heard him laughing." I just stared at her and told her, "I heard the footsteps, and I heard him laughing too." We both turned and looked at Eli together. He was knocked out in his little bassinet, completely asleep, had been the whole time. That was the first time someone else in the house described hearing the exact same thing as me, at the same time. The white figure. Okay, now jump to my freshman year of high school, 2021. Masks were still being recommended, but not everyone was wearing them anymore. I wore mine religiously, not even for health reasons at that point. I was just anxious and insecure and felt safer behind it. I barely took it off, even to eat, which I know sounds dramatic, but that's where I was mentally. Anyway, one day I came home absolutely starving and exhausted. Nobody else was home yet. I sat down at our dining table with some food, just zoning out. Now, the house was small. I want to emphasize that. Like, if someone was in there with you, you'd know. There weren't really places to hide. I was sitting there, looking down at my phone, when out of the corner of my eye, on my right side, I saw something. A white figure. It wasn't detailed. It was more like a streak or a shape. It moved fast, from the far corner of the room to another corner that I couldn't see fully without turning my whole head. I didn't give myself any time to overthink. I just stood up immediately and walked, almost ran, to the corner where I thought it went. Nobody. Nothing. No open windows. No curtains moving. I checked every obvious hiding spot, even though I knew deep down it wasn't a person. In a house that small, if someone was messing with me, they would have been caught in, like, 2 seconds. I remember just standing there, in the silence, my heart racing, trying to convince myself I was just tired. That's what I kept telling myself. You're hungry. You're exhausted. You're anxious. You're seeing things. But it didn't feel like seeing things. It felt like I'd walked in on something that didn't expect to be seen. The basement and the hand. Early 2022 was when my whole family got COVID. Somehow, I was the only one who didn't test positive. So instead of isolating them, they isolated me. Lucky me, I got sent to the basement. The basement was unfinished. One of the long walls was made of the same stone as that old stone house next door. You could literally see the rough, uneven blocks. It always felt colder along that wall. There was a stuffy little room down there with a walk-in closet. The closet didn't have a door, just an open doorway, and it was crammed full of the homeowner's old stuff. Boxes of clothes, random furniture, all that. I slept on a mattress on the floor in that room. When I lay down, my head faced the open closet. There was no avoiding it. It was right in my line of sight. I turned off the main light in the room, but left the closet light on, so I wouldn't feel completely in the dark. Under that light, there was a simple wooden chair sitting in the middle of the closet, like it was waiting for someone. I remember lying there on my back, just staring at one of the legs of the chair. It was like my body was too tired to move, but my brain wouldn't shut up. I started to feel this weird heaviness, like I was pinned to the mattress. Then, in those few seconds that felt much longer, I saw it. A hand. It held there for maybe 3 seconds. Then it let go. My whole body went ice cold. And here's the weirdest part. Instead of screaming or running upstairs, I just shut down. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and forced myself to sleep. It's like my brain decided the safest thing to do was pretend it hadn't happened. Later that year, my dad built me a small bedroom in what used to be part of the living room, right in the spot where I'd seen that white figure run to before. And that new room? It was directly above the basement room with the stone wall and that closet. I remember realizing that and just thinking, of course it's the same spot. The glass and the joke. About a year ago, before we moved out, I had my friend Jasmine over. We were hanging out in the basement, and I started telling her about all the creepy things I'd experienced in that house. I was being a little theatrical on purpose because she gets scared easily. And yes, I love her, but I also find her reactions hilarious. We decided to go back upstairs, so I bolted up the stairs and she followed behind me, clinging to the railing. We got to the main floor, and I kept going, talking louder than I usually would about the ghost in the house. Normally, I never talk about it out loud like that. I always had this superstition, like if I acknowledged it too much, whatever it was would know that I knew. But this time, I was showing off a little, I guess. I said something kind of mean about how the ghost probably looked, like a dumb, petty little insult about its appearance. I was joking, but yeah, not my smartest moment. Right as the words left my mouth, a glass food container flew off the table. And I don't mean it slid. I don't mean it rolled. I mean it came off the top of this fruit stand thing we had, the highest part of the table, and shattered on the floor right next to where my baby sister Rosa was standing. The sound of the glass breaking snapped everything into slow motion. I ran to her immediately, checking for cuts, for blood, anything. She was fine. She hadn't even processed what happened, but there were glass shards everywhere. I stood there shaking, because I remembered putting that container on the top tier of the fruit stand earlier. There was no way Rosa could have reached it. She was tiny. Even now she's small, but back then? No chance. Jasmine was pale and wide-eyed, and I didn't even try to joke anymore. I just cleaned up the glass and quietly decided I would never talk about that ghost like that again. Leaving the house. Not long after that, around April 2024, we finally moved into our own house. Ever since we left that place, nothing has happened. No footsteps, no bells, no white figures, no hands on chair legs. It's been quiet. And I didn't realize how loud that other house felt until we were gone. Whenever I talk about it with my aunt and uncle, Tia Carmen and Uncle Luis, they both insist it was just the basement. They say there wasn't enough light, most of the windows were blocked, and my brain was filling in the gaps. And honestly, I get that. I've watched horror movies since I was like 10 years old. I don't scare easily. I can sit in the dark basement with the lights off and be fine, for a little while. But in that house, I could never stay down there too long. There was always this feeling, like someone was watching me from a corner I couldn't quite see. I know how all of this sounds. I know people can explain a lot of things away with, "You were tired," or "You're into horror, so your mind plays tricks on you," or "Old houses are creaky." Maybe they're right about some of it. All I can say is this. In that little house, 30 steps from the first stone house in the city, something was there with us. And I swear on my life, every single thing I just told you really did happen to me. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you like you're here with me, because honestly, I'm still shaking even thinking about this. These last few months have been rough, like really rough. I live at home with my parents, my mom Elena and my stepdad Mark, and something's been going on in the house that we can't really explain anymore. At this point, paranormal is the only word that feels close, even if it sounds dramatic. It started small. It always does, right? First, it was the lights. I thought it was just bad wiring or dodgy bulbs. The bathroom light would flicker, then the one in the hallway, sometimes the one over the kitchen sink. They'd flick off and on like someone was playing with the switch. We changed all the bulbs, even had a friend who's an electrician take a quick look, and Yeah, still happening. Mostly in the bathroom and hallway. It's like those two places are, I don't know, favorite spots. Then our cats started acting weird. We've got 3 of them now, Luna, Milo, and Pepper. They've always been pretty chill, the usual zoomies at 3 a.m., but nothing wild. But lately, they'll just freeze and stare into the corner of a room like they're watching someone move around. Sometimes they'll hiss at the empty doorway. Luna arches her back and her fur stands up, and there's just nothing there. At least, nothing we can see. And then we started hearing things. The first thing I heard was this growl. It was stupidly late, middle of the night, and I was half asleep. It came from the hallway outside my bedroom door. It was low, deep, like it came from someone's chest rather than an animal. It absolutely scared the life out of me. Our cats can't make a noise like that. And yeah, one of the windows in the living room was open a crack, but it wasn't windy, and this didn't sound like something from outside. It sounded inside. My parents hear things too. My mom's told me she hears me calling her name sometimes, like I'm shouting for her from my room. And when she goes to check on me, I'm just wearing my headphones, minding my own business. Mark says he once heard me crying in the bathroom, but I was at work when that happened. The worst for him, though, was the voice. He was in the kitchen one evening, washing dishes, and he swears a man's voice, really clear and close, said, "Hello," right behind him. Just that. Hello. No one else heard it. Mom was in the living room, I was in my room, and he kind of came in white as a sheet. Mark's not the type to spook easily. He's very, it's probably nothing, about everything, but he was genuinely shaken. That's what scared me, seeing him scared. There are other sounds too. I've heard faint music at night, like someone's playing an old radio in another room. It's sort of muffled, like a lullaby or some slow song you can't quite catch the words to. And knocking. 3 knocks in a row, sometimes on the wall near my bed, sometimes from the inside of the wardrobe door. It mostly happens after midnight, when everything's quiet and you can't pretend you didn't hear it. Then there's the physical stuff. Both Mark and I have been touched. He told me he was in the kitchen one afternoon, waiting for the kettle to boil, and he felt a hand run slowly down his back. Naturally, he thought it was my mom messing around. But when he turned, she was at the table scrolling through her phone, nowhere near him. He didn't even tell us that story until recently because he didn't want to freak us out. A lot of the time, it feels like there's something sitting between my shoulder blades, just this constant weight on my back, pressing down. Even when nothing else is happening, that feeling hangs around. We've both been scratched, too. I only found out recently that Mark had been scratched on his upper arm. 3 thin lines, like something had clawed him. He was in the laundry room when it happened. He said it stung all of a sudden, and when he checked, there were these red marks and a bit of blood. For me, it was my side, just under my ribs. I was getting changed and felt this burning sensation. When I looked in the mirror, there were 3 long scratches running diagonally across my skin. Not deep enough to bleed, but red and raised like a fresh cat scratch. Except none of the cats were in my room, and I definitely hadn't done it myself. A few nights ago was one of the worst moments. I got up around 2 a.m. to get some water. The house was dark and quiet, and you know that feeling when the air just feels thick? Like you're walking into a room where people have just been arguing? It felt like that. I stepped into the hallway, and this horrible awareness hit me, like something was already watching me from the far end. So I stopped. I looked down the hallway toward the front door, and right by the coat rack, just behind it, I saw something lean out. Not all the way, just enough to look at me. It was tall, taller than Mark, easy, and it was basically a shadow. No face, no features, just a human-shaped darkness with a kind of edge to it, like the air bent around it. It didn't move. It just stared. My whole body went cold. I genuinely thought I was going to throw up. I couldn't look away for a few seconds, and then my fight or flight just cut out, and I stumbled back into my room, shut the door, and sat on the floor shaking. I didn't even get the water. Things move on their own now, too. One afternoon I was at my desk, and I heard a thump right above my head. The shelf above my desk holds my albums and a couple of little figures. Out of nowhere, 3 of my albums just slid forward and fell to the floor. The window was closed, no trucks going by, no one stomping around. The weird part is, they fell in the opposite direction of how they were leaning. It was like someone pushed them deliberately. In the bathroom, we've got one of those circular ring towel holders fixed to the wall. I was in the shower one morning, door closed, no one else in there, and I heard this rattling metal sound. I peeked out, and the ring was swinging from side to side, like someone had just yanked the towel and let it go. It kept going for longer than it should have, like it had a bit too much energy behind it. On top of all this, my mood has been all over the place. I mean, I've been stressed about other stuff too. Life, work, normal things. But this feels different. I go from fine to angry to crying to numb in the span of a day. Little things set me off. I'm snapping at people, then apologizing 5 minutes later. Since all of this started, my sleep's gone to hell. I've been having these vivid nightmares where I'm stuck in my room and something is crouched under my bed, whispering my name. Sometimes I wake up and I'm not sure if I can move right away, like I'm pinned down. It feels like I'm being watched pretty much constantly, like I can't relax in my own home. Honestly, after I did that, it seemed to get worse. The noises were louder. The shadows felt closer. I started waking up more often with that pressure on my shoulders. We've never tried to invite anything into our home. We're not doing Ouija boards or summoning rituals or anything like that. We've had a few odd things happen in the past, like lights flickering on the anniversary of a family member's death, but it always felt gentle, like a loved one checking in. This is not that. This feels heavy and wrong and angry. And the worst part is, it feels like I'm the one getting most of it. Like whatever this is has decided I'm the main target. I don't know why. There are probably more little things I'm forgetting. Cold spots, footsteps when everyone's in bed, doors that are open when we're sure we closed them. But my head is kind of scrambled just talking about it. I'm scared all the time. Genuinely. I walk around my own house and my chest feels tight, like I can't get a full breath in. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm tired. I'm frightened. And it feels like I don't have anywhere safe to just exist. I keep hoping I'll wake up one day and it'll all just stop. But it hasn't yet. And that's why I'm telling you this. Because I needed someone to hear it. To understand that I'm not just being dramatic or imagining things. So yeah, that's what's been happening in our house. So, this happened last winter, on a trip to a hill station with 2 of my friends, Kabir and Nina. We were there for 4 days, and on the 3rd morning, Kabir shook me awake at around 3:30 a.m. I remember blinking at him like, "Are you serious right now?" And he goes, "Sunrise trek, viewpoint, come on." Nina had a slight fever and refused to get up, so it ended up being just the 2 of us. We layered up, thermals, hoodies, whatever we could find, and stepped out into this sharp, biting cold. You know the kind that hits your face and suddenly you're wide awake? The whole town was asleep. The sky was this deep, inky blue, and the streetlights were patchy, some flickering, some completely dead. The trail to the viewpoint started just beyond the last row of houses. It was technically a marked path, but it felt completely abandoned. On both sides, the forest just swallowed everything. Tall pines leaning in, branches hanging low, like they were eavesdropping. It was so quiet that every crunch of gravel and dry leaves under our shoes sounded wrong, too loud. We kept following these old wooden signboards, viewpoint 2.3 kilometers, then viewpoint 1.8 kilometers. But every time we checked the map on Kabir's phone, it weirdly felt like the blue dot had barely moved. You know that glitchy, laggy feeling where your brain starts going, are we moving or is the map messing with us? At some point, I got this really strong feeling that we weren't alone. Like something in the trees was keeping pace with us. I couldn't see anything, just layers of black and dark green, but it felt aware. Then we zoomed out on the map, and that's when we realized the trail we were on passed right between an old British-era cemetery and a Hindu cremation ground, both hidden behind the tree line. They weren't visible from the road, but they were right there on the map. And that changed everything. Suddenly the air felt heavier. We started noticing how some parts of the road had these weak yellow lights, and other parts were just swallowed by this thick darkness. The kind of dark where your phone torch feels like a joke. We thought about turning back, but we'd already walked so far in, and the idea of trying to navigate back through that darkness, without really knowing the way, felt somehow even scarier. So we kept going, walking faster, not really talking anymore. That's when the dogs showed up. 4 of them. No collars, no tags. They just appeared out of the shadows ahead of us, like they'd been waiting. At first, we froze. Stray dogs at that hour, on a lonely road, can go either way, right? Attack you? Ignore you? You don't know. But these ones didn't growl or anything. 2 of them went ahead of us, trotting calmly, and the other 2 fell in behind us. It was so deliberate, like a formation. Kabir and I just looked at each other, and without even saying it out loud, we decided to trust them. As we walked, they stayed with us. When we slowed down, they slowed down. When we stopped, they turned back to look at us, like, why are we stopping? Every time there was some weird sound from the forest, a crack, a rustle, something, one of them would bark in that direction, short and alert, and the others would suddenly go tense. After a while, the road itself changed. It went from concrete to this rough, broken track, and eventually it just faded out. Like the mountain had decided, that's enough road, no more. In front of us, there was just blackness. No path, no markers, just a steep drop into trees and fog and nothing we could see. Beyond the last broken bit of road, my phone torch just got eaten by the dark. They started barking at that darkness. Not normal barking. This was frantic, angry, almost desperate. They were standing right at the edge of where the road ended, hackles raised, teeth bared, barking at nothing. There was nothing we could see. No animal, no movement, just empty air and black space. And I don't know how to explain this, but whatever they were reacting to, it felt wrong. Like if we stepped past that point, we'd be stepping into something we weren't supposed to touch. That was it for us. We didn't even talk it through. Kabir just said, "We're going back." And I was like, "Yes, right now." The moment we turned around, the dogs did too. Same formation, 2 ahead, 2 behind. This time, though, they were more alert, pausing at random spots, sniffing the air, staring into the trees for a second too long. We didn't run, but it felt like we were constantly on the edge of it. The strange thing was, on the way back, we barely saw any of the signboards we remembered. It was like the trail was shorter, or different. We just kept walking, following the dogs, until suddenly the forest thinned out, and we were back near the first houses of the town. By then it was around 6 in the morning. The sky was turning lighter, that pale bluish gray you get right before sunrise. The streets were still empty, shutters down, no one around. We sat down near this closed tea stall, completely drained. The dogs sat with us. One curled up right at my feet. Another flopped next to Kabir. They weren't restless anymore, just there, calm, waiting. At around 6:15, one of the shops finally opened. We got some biscuits and water, and of course, the first thing we did was share the biscuits with the dogs. They ate them happily, tails wagging, but still stayed close, like they were on duty. Right then, this man rode by on a brown horse, like straight out of another era. He looked like a local, with this thick jacket and a scarf wrapped around his face. He slowed down when he saw us and asked where we were headed. We told him we'd tried to go to the viewpoint but turned back, and he said, "Now there's enough light. If you still want to go, I can take you. It's not safe in the dark." We turned around to gesture at the dogs, like, "We're okay, they were with us." And they were gone. Just like that. No paws trotting away, no tails disappearing around a corner. They were there 1 second, and the next second, there was nothing. The street was completely empty. Later, when I got back home and told my mom the whole story, she didn't react the way I expected. I thought she'd laugh or call us dramatic. Instead, she got really quiet. Then she said, "You should never walk near graveyards or cremation grounds at that hour. At night, there are things that roam freely, dark things." She looked straight at me and asked, "What if something had followed you home? What if one of you had gotten possessed? There were only 2 of you. What would you have done?" And that question, that's the part that still gets to me. I can handle the creepy trail and the weird map and the barking at nothing. But that thought of something attaching itself to us when we were so far from everyone else sticks. I don't know what was in that forest with us. I don't know what the dogs saw when they barked at that patch of darkness. But I know this much. Whatever they were, those 4 dogs weren't just dogs.